The story begins in the midst of the ball. The violinist played a melody that had long been familiar to everyone, and the ladies gossiped about the outfits of those around them. But the main star of the evening was the Duke of Cayenne of Wintel himself. As soon as he stepped out into the public, he was immediately surrounded. He was excellent. Every girl dreamed of getting at least a little of his attention. Suddenly, the audience noticed a girl who brazenly approached the Duke and spoke. Girls and boys looked at her with condemnation. They asked each other what kind of family she might be from to wear such an old-fashioned dress to a National Trust banquet. Cayenne fixed his gaze on the sweet girl and could not tear it away. She wore a soft pink dress with lace and embroidered roses. Immediately, the girl leaned over slightly and introduced herself. Her name was Atisha Hines from the Viscountcy of Hines. She turned to his lordship and said that he probably had not heard of them since they were half-Westerners. The man thought about it. Cayenne of Wintel said he knows this young lady Hines. The Duke asked what she wanted to discuss with him, but the girl only lowered her eyes in response. Lady Hines apologized and asked if they could talk on the balcony. A crowd of people looked at them in surprise and sighed displeasedly. The girl explained that this was simply not something worth talking about here. They both stood on the guarantee near the luxurious garden of the Duke's family. Atisha Hines stood and still didn't know how to start a conversation. She was afraid to hear a refusal. They stood there for so long until her lips trembled and tears flowed from her eyes. Unexpectedly for the Duke, the girl said that she might die soon. An awkward silence fell between them. The only sounds you can hear are crickets and muffled music at the ball. The girl looked up and was surprised at how calm the Duke stood. Atisha asked, "Does your lordship have a mistress?" She thought he might detain her due to suspicion of ulterior motives, but she has no other choice. The girl said that she knows that your lordship has a secret child. The guy was shocked by her words, and with fear in his eyes told her to continue. She apologized and said that she knew it was unexpected, but she had to finish it before her sister arrived. The lady turned away and asked, "Does your ladyship need a false bride? A bride who will fill the empty space." The man thought about her words. Atisha Hines, after some hesitation, said that she could fill it, like the air that disappears as soon as the time comes for your lordship and his secret mistress. The girl continued that he needed a person who would not create problems. She will live as if she does not exist and quietly leave. After her death, no one will pressure him to take another girl as his wife. Cayenne of Wintel looked at her indignantly and asked why he should listen to her. He doesn't enjoy playing with people's lives. The man turned around and was ready to leave for the ball, but then the girl asked him, "Has your lordship heard any rumors that the Duke treasures his secret mistress?" Lady Hines added that even if you marry a duke, you will receive the title of duchess but not a wife. All the ladies in the capital know about this. The girl screamed, "Isn't this the same as playing in people's lives?" The Duke turned around and said that these are aristocratic marriages. Atisha replied that he knows and that is why she is offering it to him. She will die soon anyway. The girl drooped and looked down at the floor. The lady said that your ladyship does not need to waste your nerves on her. All he has to do is marry her before he dies, even for a year. From her father's stepmother and older sister, she wants to escape the Hines family. She wants to spend the rest of her life in comfort, not in a family where everyone hates her. Atisha Hines bent low and began to beg the Duke to take her as his wife. "Take her with you, north." Cayenne thought about her words. The man asked, "Is it true that she is terminally ill?" The girl confirmed and said that she was at the 3rd stage of the disease. She still stood leaning towards the Duke Cayenne of Wintel, thought about his decision. Atisha Hines thought he probably found it strange that a girl he didn't even know was asking him for something like that so suddenly. She closed her eyes and confirmed that she had no regrets. Unexpectedly, the Duke called her name. The girl raised her head a little. The man said she was right. His family is pressuring him to get married, but he would never want a wife, and therefore he paused for a moment. Cayenne doesn't think her proposal is bad. The girl raised her head at him in surprise. The guy continued that feelings are of no use for a contractual marriage agreed upon by both parties. Atisha had tears in her eyes. She didn't believe he agreed. The Duke took a ring from his pocket and asked her to give him her hand. She raised her hand, and the man placed a diamond ring on her ring finger. It sparkled from the light of the moon and was so beautiful that the girl could not look away. The girl thought it was a ring with the sign of the Duke of Wintel. It itself perfectly adjusted to her. She thanked his lordship for such a wonderful gift and for agreeing to the contract. Atisha Hines will make sure he doesn't regret their marriage. The night after the ball, another quarrel occurred at the Hines estate. Atisha Hines decided to tell her family she was sick, but venturing forward proved too difficult. The girl was already afraid to start the conversation first, so her stepmother, Madame Dorothea, immediately interrupted her. The woman said that she was busy, and if it didn't matter, then let her figure it out herself. Atisha said that a few days ago the doctor diagnosed her. She has hypermania syndrome. Tears flowed from the girl's eyes. Her half-sister, Larianne Hines, asked what kind of disease this was. Lady Hines replied that it was an incurable disease. The stepmother asked, "Are you talking about that disease in which mana accumulates inside the body? And in the case of a woman, does her body explode?" Atisha replied that it was. The doctor told her that she was already in the 3rd stage and that she only had a year to live. The girl cried loudly. What should she do about it now? Suddenly, Madame Dorothea shouted that she should make every effort for her 20th birthday. The girl looked up at her questioningly. Her father also joined the conversation. The man said that he was very scared because they did not know when Atisha would explode. Suddenly, her stepsister jumped up and said that this was creepy, she better not leave the room. What if it explodes right in front of her? The stepmother added that Atisha calls them all for all sorts of trifles. All family members agreed and already got up to go to their rooms. They closed the doors to the hall, and Atisha was left standing all alone in the dimly lit room. She couldn't believe how everyone reacted to the news of her death. Even her own father. Atisha always thought she was the weird one. The man holding a pointer in his hands shouted to her, "Is it really the same today? Looks like you need to be taught a lesson so you can understand." Because she was slow, she couldn't understand. Larianne yells at little Atisha to make the girl do what she told her. Atisha Hines always thought it was her fault that she didn't receive love. The stepmother told Atisha to wear her stepsister's dress. Since she has brown hair, there is no point in wearing a new dress. However, all this was not because of her father, stepmother, and Larianne. They just don't like her. The girl realized that she had no family. Due to the fact that Atisha spoke about her illness, she is now not allowed to leave the mansion. Suddenly, the girl overheard the conversation of the maids. They talked about the Duke and that he was looking for a wife. Another maid asked if they were talking about the Duke of the North Cayenne of Wintel. One of them sighed in amazement and asked, "What about the Duchess?" She answered her that according to rumors, the Duke of Wintel has a loving mistress. Atisha thought about it and told herself that if death was the same everywhere, then she would like to leave the Hines family. She remembered that evening on the veranda with the Duke. The girl promised him that he would never regret it. Atisha asked him to announce the wedding as soon as possible while the National Trust banquet is still underway. Cayenne of Wintel asked, "Do you mean to say that you wish to go north as soon as the banquet is over?" The girl looked down and answered, "Yes, if possible, or can't you do it?" In fact, it is customary for nobles who are equivalent to dukes to announce their engagement first and only then their wedding. If the duke suddenly announced a wedding, it would be an ideal chance to stir up a scandal about an accidental marriage. Atisha is not afraid of losing her honor, but the honor of Duke Cayenne. The lady said that if it was too sudden, he could announce the engagement first, and he should explain the whole situation to his mistress first. Suddenly, the Duke took her hand in his and said that this was the Wintel family ring. "He will do whatever she wants, Duchess of Wintel." The girl couldn't believe her ears. The guy asked if she understood what he told her. The girl looked at him with sparkling eyes and talked about how grateful she was to him. She had heard that the Duke of the North was known as a ruthless and cruel war hero, and they also say that he has a scary and cold character. The girl examined him carefully. He is so kind to her. Or is this just a falsehood for the one who will become the temporary duchess? Perhaps this is all a pity, although in fact that was not the case at all. It doesn't matter whether it's politeness towards his fake wife or pity she's not interested. Atisha said that then she would like to announce her on the last day of the banquet. The guests in the hall were still enjoying the evening. Some were dancing, some were gossiping. But then the doors opened and Lady Hines entered the hall. Without exception, all eyes were fixed on her. Girls and men whispered, asking each other what she was talking about with the Duke, maybe about marriage? And immediately the others denied this theory. This is impossible. The first daughter can still do it, but the second one can't. On the first day of the banquet, the ladies discussed why the first daughter of the Hines family was delayed. But then the doors of the palace opened and she appeared, Lady Hines. She looked simply divine. All the boys' and girls' eyes were fixed on her. Larianne walked, and with her graceful gait she made men look at her with their mouths open and girls envy. Suddenly, the girl shouted her sister's name to the whole hall. She came up and asked how she could take her invitation to the banquet. She's the reason she's late. It's only the first day, what is she going to do about it? Atisha replied that she came with an invitation with their last name written on it. She didn't take it. Larian Hines came very close to her and loudly said that everything that belongs to the Hines family is hers. She squeezed her sister's hands tightly, causing her to start crying and screaming for her to let her go. Larian Hines quietly told her, "Atisha, you are also Hines, therefore you are mine. Didn't I tell you not to leave your room? Why did you, who had never been interested in such banquets, come here?" She squeezed her head tightly and Atisha fought back her tears. Larian continued to say that she bought her a toy every day so that she would not get bored and even sang songs to her, all because she didn't give her the doll? Atisha remembered one moment from her childhood. Larian told her to look in the mirror. She dressed her up and asked if she thought it was pretty cute. The girl could not take her eyes off herself. Atisha confirmed and asked if she could show it to Mom and Dad. Larian rudely asked why. Satisfied, Atisha replied, "Because you made me beautiful. It won't be good if..." Before she could finish speaking, she heard the sound of sharp scissors clicking in her sister's hands. Her beautiful locks of hair were now lying on the floor. Larian, standing with scissors in her hands, asked if she still wanted to show herself to others. Atisha, with tears in her eyes, asked her not to say such a thing. Larian Hines came very close to her and smiled and said, "You are my doll." The newspapers were filled with loud headlines about one of the Hines family sisters. Hines burned the Countess's tea table. By tearing up the painting, Larian Hines has destroyed another asset of the Crown Prince. Larian is a bad person. To what extent, Atisha did not even know. If Larian likes something, she gets it. Always. If she didn't like something, she would tear it apart. At first, everyone condemned Larian for her actions, but then the girls laughed and said that this is Miss Larian, this is in her repertoire. They couldn't wait to see what Miss Larian would do next. Larian receives love no matter what she does. She is so beautiful, but she makes Atisha sick more than anyone else. Larian leaned over and quietly told Atisha that she was her doll, only her. Therefore, the girl took a bucket of cold water and doused her younger sister, adding that this is why other people will never see her. The drenched Atisha sat with her eyes downcast, unable to defend herself. She threw away the memories, and now they were again standing in the middle of the hall, surrounded by a large crowd of people. Larian squeezed her sister's hands more and more tightly. Atisha calmly asked, "Can't play with dolls anymore? I don't even know when this might happen, Scary." Miss Larian flew into a rage at this question. She shouted to the whole hall that this is exactly what is scary. The girl ordered her to quickly return back to the mansion. "Stay at home and don't come back." Usually when this happens, she can only listen to Sister Larian. Because Atisha Hines is obedient, she is timid and weak, she cannot even squeak. But not at this time. Atisha broke away from her sister's arms and screamed that she didn't want to. She's not going back. The girl said that she would stay at the banquet. If Larian doesn't want to see her, then let her go home. Larian was very surprised by this answer. Atisha continued speaking. "Can't you hear me? I said you should go home. And not only today, but until the National Fun Banquet ends. Atisha will come here every day. To go or not to go home is up to Larian herself." The girl turned around and was about to leave. But suddenly her sister grabbed her painfully by the shoulder and already swung her hand at her. The girl had already closed her eyes, but there was no blow in response. Atisha didn't understand what happened. He was definitely going to slap her. When she opened her eyes, she saw the Duke of Cayenne of Wintel next to her, who tightly grabbed her sister's hand so that she would not hit her. He turned to Miss Larian and asked what she allowed herself. She was shocked and did not know what to answer him. The man asked, "Does your family not value education?" He can't believe they practice such violence. It's more like what's happening in the valley. Larian thought about why the Duke stood up for Atisha. She introduced herself and asked to let him go because she was in pain. He of course let me go but said that there wouldn't be a second time. Larian looked at him in disbelief and asked what he meant. The Duke of Cayenne of Wintel said that if she raises her hand against Lady Atisha Hines again, she will not go unpunished. Larian couldn't believe what she heard. The man asked Atisha if she was okay. She replied that she was fine. He asked if this happens all the time. Is that why she asked to be taken north? In response, the girl only lowered her gaze to the floor. He turned pale and said, "What horror." Then suddenly, Larian Hines did not scream from the entire audience. "On north? Did he say north?" The girl did not understand what all this meant. All the people started making noise. They immediately began to discuss the news that Miss Atisha and Duke Wintel would travel north together. Larianne started shouting at her sister. "Are you going north? Tisha, look me in the eye and explain yourself. How dare you go somewhere?" Atisha replied that this was a private matter between her and the Duke. She doesn't need it. Larianne said it was all a lie. Since when has she known Duke Wintel? The man interrupted her and addressed Lady Hines. Miss Larianne responded immediately. He said, "Lady Hines, let's forget about this." Atisha couldn't believe it. She doesn't think that Duke Cayenne won't marry her, a lady from a family who shows herself this way. Cayenne said that instead of the last day of the banquet, he will announce right now. Atisha asked again. Duke Cayenne of Wintel said, "I announce our marriage." Larianne Hines was furious. She couldn't believe what the man said. The Duke took Atisha's hand and raised it up, thereby showing everyone her ring on her finger. The guy said that Lady Atisha Hines would become his wife and take on the surname Wintel. Whoever dares to tarnish her reputation will also tarnish him, the Duke of Cayenne of Wintel. He said loudly that this was his eternal promise in the name of God. Those around were perplexed. Did she really get married? Larianne Hines stood there and mumbled that it was all a lie. Her Tisha could not marry the Duke of Cayenne of Wintel. The girl thought that her sister's condition could not be called normal. She was sick. Atisha didn't know what to do if Larianne told everyone about my hypermania syndrome. If she reveals the truth to the public that the new Duchess of Wintel is terminally ill, Atisha does not know whether the Duke's vassals will insist that he take another girl as his wife. She came closer to her sister and said that once she became the Duchess of Wintel, she was leaving home. Larianne in response came even closer and said, "No, Tisha, you made the wrong choice. You are sick and this is not normal." The girl is sure that something happened to Tisha's head? Larianne asked if she was right. Atisha asked what she was talking about. Larianne replied, "Oh, my poor little sister, you are a stupid but sweet child. She doesn't think she can't just wait and see." She knew that Tisha should have stayed only in her room. "It's so scary." The girl called Atisha crazy. The Duke turned to Larianne Hines and said that the only crazy person here was her. Larianne, furious, asked what he said. The man told her that Miss Atisha had clearly said that she would become the Duchess of Wintel. He added that to tarnish the reputation of Atisha is to tarnish the reputation of the Duke of Cayenne of Wintel. The Duke shouted at her to leave and pointed at the door. She shouted that this couldn't be. The Duke raised his tone and once again said to get out of sight. He added that she would think about her behavior in the mansion until the banquet was over and until he and his future wife, Miss Atisha, returned to the north. The man said that he did not even want to see her and again told her to leave. Larianne came to her senses and started talking to Tisha in a sweet voice and asking them to return to the mansion together. She suddenly said that this time they would play with dolls together. Atisha Hines shrank and turned pale. The Duke took notice of this and said that she did not look well. The girl turned her attention from her sister and after asking again looked at the Duke with frightened eyes. Cayenne said that it was better for her to rest and gave her his hand, waiting for her to choose. The girl put her hand on his, and together they left the main hall, leaving Larianne. All around one could hear ridicule of Larianne and bewilderment at the Duke's decision. Larianne Hines was left standing alone in the middle of the hall. All she could do then was clench her teeth and fists. Atisha sat in a well-lit room and thought about what had happened. Who would have thought that her wedding would be announced in a day? The sister will definitely tell their parents everything, and there are 2 days left before the end of the banquet. The girl was very afraid that her father would take that whip again. Cayenne approached her and asked if she was okay. The girl was even afraid to look at him. She said that she was too angry with her sister and may have gotten him into big trouble. The man replied that when she returned to the ballroom, everyone would forget about what happened, blessing them. He hoped she understood that the girl looked down and asked if he was telling the truth. The Duke added that although he was a little rude, Ms. Hines asked why. He replied that he was in a hurry to announce their wedding. The girl immediately began to deny. She said it wasn't rude. The Duke helped her a lot. Atisha smiled. The man thought about her words about helping her. He didn't do this to help her. And in order to preserve the honor and dignity of Wintels as the head of the family, the girl replied that the reason was not important. He still helped her. She felt that she had received his help. The Duke asked, "Really?" Atisha said this is the first time someone has put Larianne Hines on the spot. She added that this is the feeling in her heart. He will never understand it. The Duke thought for a moment and replied that he could and would understand her. He asked what she was thinking of doing next. The girl replied that she didn't know for sure. Atisha asked if she would go north after the banquet was over. The guy answered negatively. He emphasized that he was asking about her plans for tonight. The Duke asked if she would return to the Heinz mansion or go with him. The girl imagined all the horror that awaited her at home and froze. Cayenne of Wintel asked if he understood correctly that she does not want to be with her family. Atisha said he was right. The guy said that since they were leaving for the north, he invited her to his villa in the capital. Since they have already officially announced the wedding, there will be no scandals about the fact that they will be together for 2 days. The girl did not even expect that the Duke could be so attentive. The only thing she can do for him is to die quickly. She thanked him for this, but said that she couldn't do that. Cayenne said that she is his partner. He suggests this to her because he is worried that she might get hurt after being at the Heinz mansion. Atisha was shocked. No one ever worried about her. Cayenne added that if she had thought about it, he suggested going to his villa. Now Atisha said that she would do so then, and thanked him. The man responded to her gratitude by saying that there was no need for it. She didn't need to thank him. He's not doing this to help her. Miss interrupted him and said that even if he wasn't going to help her, she got help. Therefore, she should thank him from the bottom of her heart. The Duke looked at his companion and realized how important this was for her. Meanwhile, at the Heinz estate, the family learned of the marriage of the Duke of Cayenne of Wintel to their daughter. When my father found out, he jumped up from his seat and shouted that this couldn't be happening. What kind of marriage could there be between Atisha and Duke Cayenne of Wintel? The man asked himself what talent his daughter had to become a duchess. Madame Dorothea said that it was rumored that the Duke had a mistress. The father continued to shout about how the prince could decide to marry without the consent of the family. Larianne Heinz ran into the room and screamed, asking her parents if Atisha could get married. The girl, with tears in her eyes, hoped that she would return to her back to their home. The stepmother replied that if they gave her away, what family would want to take her? She is a complete zero at everything. The father told them to be quiet. He himself became thoughtful and began to stroke his mustache. He thought and firmly said that they should not interfere with their wedding. If she marries the Duke of Wintel, they will have connections. They will be able to expand their business to the very north, and they will even build new tracks there. Larianne was categorically against this, and therefore shouted the word "dad" to the entire palace. He told her to calm down and added that this was a unique opportunity. Larianne continued to shout that Tisha would die soon because she had hypermania syndrome. This is where the girl's mother got involved. She asked how he could send a child with such an illness. What if something happens, for example, at a banquet? What next? The father replied that this meant they needed to send her north as soon as possible. They both looked at him in surprise, and the daughter asked again. The man replied that if they were in time, the incident would happen in the north, and they will just pretend that they knew nothing about her illness. Dorothea replied that it was a great plan. The person who diagnosed Atisha syndrome is their family doctor. If they shut his mouth, then there will be nothing to worry about. The father said they had little time left before Atisha died. They must reach an agreement with the Wintel family. They organize everything. Larianne suddenly screamed that she didn't want it that way. She doesn't want Atisha to become Wintel. The girl wants Tisha to be locked in the mansion. She began to persuade her mother to do this. She in turn asked her husband what he would do with the dowry. If she marries the Duke, they will have to pay a huge amount as dowry. The father smiled and said that he had already decided everything. He calculated everything. The carriage in which the Duke and Duchess were sitting was driving through the city at night. Atisha could not believe that she was in the same carriage with the Duke, whom she met just yesterday. She was so fascinated by what was happening. For the first time in a long time, she was free. She looked at her future husband and admired him. He looked thoughtful, and the thought ran through her mind that he really was handsome. Duke Cayenne is often considered the second most handsome man in the empire, which Atisha thought was wrong. Majesty the Emperor must always come first. For her personally, the Duke is the most handsome. The Duke and His Majesty the Emperor had been close friends since their youth, as His Majesty had grown up in the north, rather than in the capital when he was still a prince. Besides, they fought together. Atisha was thinking about whether beautiful people are always close. She was distracted from her thoughts by the voice of Duke Cayenne. He called her name, addressing her. The girl wondered if she was really staring at him so obviously. The man asked her if she could handle the cold well, because it was very cold in the north. The Duke said that of course she knew that, but this was not a very good place for the sick. The girl replied that she couldn't stand the cold, but she could handle anything so he shouldn't worry. Especially when traveling north, she would not be a burden to him. Kayan said that since they were going north, it would be difficult to meet people in the capital again. He asked if she had a close friend whom she would like to contact. The girl replied that she had no friends. If she had spoken to her peers, her sister would have stood between them and interrupted the conversation. Larian constantly gossiped behind her back. Atisha thought that he asked her something that she had never even thought about. Maybe he really cares about her? He warns her in advance that she will not like it in the north and will want to leave. At the time of the marriage announcement, Atisha did not think of running away, although Kayan asked if he could ask her one last question. He needs to clear something up. The girl, of course, answered that she could. The man asked if she wanted to sever ties with the Hines family, or does she want revenge, or maybe an apology from them. The girl thought about it. Suddenly, the carriage ran over a rock at speed and almost overturned. Atisha closed her eyes, but a moment later she was already in the arms of the Duke himself. The man asked if she was okay, but the girl was unable to say a word due to the unexpected turn. Miss immediately began to apologize, but the Duke stopped her and said that it was the driver's fault, so she had nothing to apologize for. He added that when they arrived at the mansion, he would talk to him. Atisha thought that he speaks so coldly, but despite this, his embrace is so warm. She told him it was the road, not the driver, and that he shouldn't order it because of the rock. The Duke turned to her and said that she was too kind, but the culprit must be brought before the law and receive appropriate punishment. For some reason, it seemed to the girl that the guilt and punishment that the Duke was talking about were not directed at the driver. She remembered his words about the Hines family's place. Atisha thought that because she was so close to him, she could feel his breath, and it seemed to her that she understood the Duke's emotions. They're hot, a burning, vengeful spirit hidden beneath a heartless gaze. The girl looked at him and wondered who he could take revenge on. She turned to the Duke and said that she was not sure Atisha has still not been able to do anything. Leaving the Hines family took a lot of courage on her part. She never thought about revenge. Atisha Wintel wondered what she really wanted from this family. She doesn't have time to think about it, but she knows one thing for sure. Now everything will be different. The girl told the Duke that she needed to think. First, she wants to sever any ties with them. The man remained silent, and Atisha immediately asked if this answer was not enough. The Duke released her and said that this answer was quite enough. The carriage arrived at the luxurious Villa Kayan of Wintel late at night. Kayan offered his hand to his bride, and she carefully climbed down. When she looked up, the girl was shocked. Atisha asked if he really owns this luxurious villa. This mansion was much larger than the Hines estate. The Duke looked towards the house and replied that the Emperor had given it to him. The girl asked if it was His Majesty. The man added that the Emperor gave him a house so that he could visit the capital more often. Atisha fell in love and said that of course such a mansion should not be left empty. The Duke remarked that Miss Atisha seemed to like the villa. The girl replied that of course it was so. Atisha Hines entered the huge house where she was already greeted by servants. Kayan of Wintel said that if she liked the villa so much, she could have it. No, pick it up. The girl looked at him with a shocked look, not believing what he said. She asked again, "Is the Duke really giving her such a huge mansion that the Emperor gave him?" The man replied that he did not need this mansion, but he could not simply get rid of the gift from His Majesty. He added that wouldn't a gift to his future Duchess be reason enough? Atisha realized that it was a wedding gift. It's probably okay for the Duke to give the mansion as a gift, but it will still go back to the Duke when she dies. The man said that he would give the ownership documents tomorrow. They needed to stay here until they left for the north, but then the house would be all to herself. Atisha agreed to accept the gift. She'll just let the Duke do what he wants. The girl thought that it would be better if she just stayed where she was. She smiled and replied that then she would accept him with gratitude. Atisha Wintel walked and still could not believe that such a large mansion would be hers. She thought that the Duke was really not amazed by such a huge mansion. Kayan of Wintel has always been expressionless. He cuts off a man's head without blinking an eye. He is known as a fierce monster on the battlefield. The Duke is cold-blooded, but the Kayan that Atisha Hines watches is not like that. He is inexpressive but not cold as everyone says about him. The girl thought that it seemed to her that the rumors were lying because he simply did not express his thoughts and was prone to rudeness. It seems to her that if you get to know him better, he is very attentive. But it's true. The Duke was kind to her from the very beginning, protected her from her sister. It's probably because she will become his fake duchess, or because she will die soon. Duke Cayenne of Wintle seems to her to be a very good person. The man said that the servant would show her to her room. The girl agreed. He added that they would see each other tomorrow then, and they both wished each other good night. When the girl found herself in her room, she immediately drew attention to the balcony. She went out and admired it. Everything was so beautiful. Not just a mansion. It seemed to her that even this piece of heaven belonged to her. In the morning, the girl got up when the sun was already high above the horizon. Suddenly, the maid Marin knocked on her room. She said that she had brought water for washing and asked permission to enter. Etisha shouted that she could come in, and a maid rushed into the room with a bowl of water. Marin said that she needed to hurry up and wash her face and then go to the living room. Etisha asked what happened there. The maid replied that the Duke had called the designers the most famous clothing designer in the capital, jewelry designer, and shoe designer. The girl added that they are all waiting for Miss Etisha. Tisha was at a loss. Etisha walked along the corridor, and when she came to the right doors, she looked into them. 3 beautifully dressed people were sitting in the room. Fashion designer, Vivian, the jeweler is Lucy, and the shoemaker is Nigel. The girl thought about the fact that these people gave Larienne many gifts. The maid asked if everything was okay. Larienne has been in the spotlight for her daily antics. She became a muse for designers, so she constantly told Tisha to do her bidding. She ordered her to go to Vivian and pick up her dress, which she ordered, and on the way to stop by Nigel and pick up her shoes. Vivian shouted at her that the dress was still being sewn and that she had made a mistake in the timing. The more Etisha was at her beck and call, the more she was looked down upon and ignored. They treated her like she was her sister's maid. However, her role today is to pretend to be the Duchess of Wintle. She doesn't need to feel depressed in front of them. The girl touched the door handle. When she entered the room, Etisha gave everyone a smile, saying that they had not seen each other for a long time, and asked how they were all doing. All 3 were numb. They probably haven't heard the news about the wedding. Vivian and Lucy started whispering and wondering why they were here early in the morning. Lucy put forward the theory that she could be the very mistress about whom there are rumors. Etisha Wintle calmed down and realized that the news had not yet reached them. The girl turned to them and said that she had been told that all 3 of them were guests of the Duke of Cayenne. She asked them to tell about what tasks the Duke entrusted to them. All 3 fell silent, and the girl once again asked someone to tell her. No one dared to talk to her, so she decided to act. Etisha said it looks like they have nothing to say. If there is nothing to do, then she goes. Vivian shouted at her to wait a minute. She said that they had received a request from the Duke. He said he needed a dress, jewelry, and shoes for the founding banquet. They know that the Duke turned to them for them, but Tisha calmly took a cup of tea in her hand and said quietly that it looked like the Duke had prepared some surprises. All 3 looked at her questioningly and asked what she meant by that. The girl smiled at them and said that this time these things were ordered for her. Vivian couldn't believe it. The Duchess told them that she would need them that evening to attend the second day of the founding banquet. She added that since she would be wearing them, it had to be a masterpiece worthy of the Wintle name. Nigel told her that if she needed it by this evening, they simply wouldn't have time. Etisha asked that don't they all use mana to absorb it into materials? The girl looked at them confidently, saying that she was sure that they could do everything. Vivian started screaming that they couldn't use up all their mana. If they take on her order, they won't be able to take on others for 3 months. They will have to close their salons during this time? Etisha asked again in surprise. She asked her that the Duke's request really didn't mean anything to her. Etisha thought that she shouldn't let them notice that she was nervous. She needs to control herself because her role is to impersonate the Duchess. The more she distracts people's attention, the more pleased the Duke is. She told herself once again that she needed to act confident. The girl thought that maybe she should imitate Larienne. She remembered how Larienne shouted to her, "If I told you to work, then work. If I tell you to work right now, then get started." Etisha shook off these thoughts. Even so, she doesn't want to be like her sister. She said that she understood that the Vivian designer was canceling the order for the dress. She looked at Lucy and Nigel and asked what about them. Lucy looked at her and couldn't believe that she was really the Duke's mistress. What was the Duke thinking when he chose a simpleton like her? Nigel thought the same thing. He had a version that she somehow got the opportunity to temporarily live in this mansion, and now she was just bluffing. The clothing designer could not restrain herself and asked Miss Hines what her relationship was with the Duke. The girl replied that she was being disrespectful. Can they ask personal questions to clients? Vivian was already full of rage and wanted to make a scandal, but then they heard the voice of the Duke, who called Lady Atisha. He stood at the door and warned that he wanted to enter. Atisha shouted to him that he could come in. All three, realizing what was happening, got up from the sofa and became petrified. When the man entered, the professionals said they were pleased to meet him. Cayenne said he was a little late, because he was figuring out how land rights work. As it turned out, the ownership of this villa is included in the price, along with the ownership of the adjacent lands. He came closer to Atisha and asked him to place his hand here. She did, and the Duke said that from now on she is the owner of this villa. Lucy didn't understand what was happening. Isn't this too much even for a mistress? But then suddenly she noticed a ring on Miss Atisha's finger. I realized that this girl was not a mistress, but a future duchess. She stepped forward and leaned over to say that she was flattered that they had given this chance. If they rely on them, they will make a masterpiece like no other in this world, worthy of Wintel's reputation. Nigel said that, as expected, even if he had to use all the materials he had saved, he would still make the most beautiful shoes in the entire country. Vivian fell to her knees and began to beg for forgiveness for her rudeness. She promised to make the best dress she could possibly have. Cayenne of Wintel replied that it was all for his wife's pleasure. But for some reason, Miss Atisha doesn't look happy now. The Duke turned to his bride, saying that she did not need to listen to them. There are enough designers, they will find others and he will send them back. Atisha said to wait. No matter how they treat her, if it becomes known that these designers have lost the trust of Duke Cayenne, they will have to close their salons. The girl added that this was enough for her. She approached the Duke and said that he had spent his time selecting designers. Everything will be fine, even if he doesn't send them back. The man asked if everything was fine. The Duchess replied, yes, he arrived at the mansion empty-handed, and she also needed something to wear. She has been to their salons a couple of times. They can safely trust them with their order. The Duke replied that as he wished, it doesn't matter if she needs to go to other designers. She can do whatever she wants. Atisha sincerely thanked the Duke for placing such trust in her. Cayenne said that he would be gone for a while and would return after lunch. The girl replied that she understood. When the door closed, she turned to the designers. She happily told them, dress jewelry shoes. Where do we start? Meanwhile, the Duke was walking through the garden already in his wife's villa. He thought about her words. Even if you didn't intend to help me, I received help. Therefore, I must thank you from the bottom of my heart. The man realized that she was right. He told her that he wouldn't help, but the truth is that he did. It doesn't even matter whether it's a hasty wedding announcement or an invitation to a mansion, or even calling designers. All this could be considered a normal relationship, like the future duchesses of Wintel. And for everything else, apparently, there is something to be grateful for. He doesn't want her to find out the meaning of this sign until the very end. If she guessed why he was helping her, he pushed those thoughts away. He promised himself that they would never use the nameplate. A carriage was already waiting for him near the mansion. When he entered it, he saw his assistant and a pile of papers nearby. Val de Proms said that he had already studied them as the Duke had ordered. She gave him the papers and said that this was an investigation report on the Hines family and Lady Atisha Hines. The Duke already knew some of the details. Remarried Viscount, portrait of a stepsister, Atisha is weak, lonely, and an ordinary girl. The Duke asked about the 3 designers he had invited and what their relationship was with Lady Atisha. The assistant replied that they were all close with Larianne Hines. Every time Miss Larianne visited the salons, she used Lady Atisha as a backup porter. To deliberately mock her, she sent her several times to get orders, even when they were not ready yet. There were days when she was completely kicked out of the salons. Cayenne of Wintel thought Atisha Hines' white face, pink hair. What deeply surprises the Duke is her composure. Her life was filled with contempt and abusive relationships. However, while asking her about the place, he remembered her words. What do I really want from this family? I don't have time to think about it. The Duke thought that she wanted something, but it would take time. Once she becomes the Duchess of Wintel, she will definitely make those who offended her apologize. He thought that it was also likely that she would want cruel revenge. She may want to strip Hines of his title, or use family members who have become commoners as servants, so that no one else dares to look down on her like before. She will have the power to make them kneel before her. However, he remembered her words about how she didn't even think about the place. How is this possible? Because she is terminally ill? Cayenne thought that if he only had a year to live, they would have very different choices. He continued to look at the report about her. If she had known about them in advance, she would have turned to other designers. The man asked to stop the carriage. Val de Prames did not understand why he needed this. He replied that he urgently needed to go to the imperial palace. He hadn't seen him for a long time. Lady Atisha sat looking out the window at the sunset in her chic outfit. The maid approached her and asked if they needed to make more tea. Miss replied that it was not worth it. She is afraid that her stomach will not be happy with so much liquid. The girl asked herself where the Duke had gone. If she asks the servants, they will say they don't know. He left the mansion in the morning and still hasn't returned. They were supposed to go to a banquet together in honor of the founding of the state, but they don't even have time to prepare. A thought struck her. Maybe he went to his mistress? If the Duke came to the capital with his mistress, this leads to the conclusion why the servants do not say anything. If this is the Duke's personal life, then it does not concern her. It's just a contract marriage without any feelings, because it was she who made such a promise. The girl did not notice how she fell asleep. She was awakened by the voice of the maid who said that the Duke had returned. She went downstairs and saw him standing and looking at the painting. She told him, "Welcome back." Cayenne apologized and said that he returned later than planned. Unexpectedly, he noticed how gorgeous she looked in her new outfit. She was all glowing. The designers did their best. The thought ran through his mind that she was very beautiful. The Duke asked if she was waiting for him. The girl replied that yes, but not for long. Atisha thanked him for giving her a new dress, jewelry, and shoes. This is the first time she has such beautiful clothes. She was in seventh heaven. Cayenne of Wintle suddenly made a surprised face. The girl did not understand what happened. He thought that she was happy. Doesn't it matter who made them? The man quickly said that it suited her very well and walked away in the other direction from her. Atisha did not understand his behavior. Didn't he like the dress? He stopped in front of the doors and said that in the north he would find her other designers. The lady said fine, but thought it looked like he really didn't like the dress. On the second day of the banquet in honor of the founding of the state, many people came. One of the invitees said that yesterday there was some kind of turmoil, it seems. The woman told him that this happened to Lady Hines. Her daughter told her about this. Another man said that if he had known about this, he would have come yesterday. Aristocrats who missed that performance the day before were asking the same question. Will Miss Atisha become the Duchess of Wintel? Isn't the Duke as impregnable as a flower on the peak of a snowy mountain? The man replied that he had made a good point. You won't even dare to climb there, and even if you do, you won't survive. The woman said that Atisha is spineless, weak, and not even beautiful. She is the most insignificant girl in the whole world, Atisha Hines. Suddenly, Atisha Hines's father burst into the banquet shouting about a wonderful evening. All the guests were shocked by his appearance. Has Viscount Hines arrived to woo his daughter? The guests looked at each other. It was clear from Larienne that she did not know his wedding. And Viscount Hines? The woman decided to come up and congratulate him. She said that apparently there was a holiday planned at his house. The man said with pleasure that this is exactly how it should be. The Duke liked Atisha. One of the barons could not resist asking if he really thought that Miss Atisha would become a duchess. Atisha's father replied that it seemed the Duke fell in love with Atisha at first sight. No matter how big he is still young. The man asked, "Isn't it wonderful when you're in the prime of your life?" The guests couldn't believe it. The rumors were true. This ruthless Duke has fallen in love. The Viscount said that the Duke of Cayenne of Wintel treasures his daughter. They can't live without each other. He looked at this crowd of people and realized that everyone had fallen for it. The Baron asked why Miss Larienne reacted to the news like that yesterday. The father smiled and said that as they all know, his eldest daughter is a little immature. He hid the wedding from her so that she would not be jealous of her younger sister. She didn't know anything. The nobles believed him. The man thought for a moment and said that, however, he was worried about only one thing. The Baron asked what he could worry about when everything was already settled. The father continued to say that, you see, the Duke said that he would not accept a penny from the dowry. The crowd was outraged. What an unheard of thing! Will he really not take anything? The Baroness shared with her friends that the wedding announcement shocked her. She believed that the Duke often stood up for Miss Atisha. Other invitees discussed how the Wintels didn't seem to care about a few pennies in dowry. Their discussion was interrupted by the Viscount, who asked whether this is what love is. The man said that the Duke probably thought that money couldn't buy love. The guests were shocked. Are we really talking about that same Duke? Merciless monster, Grand Duke of the North. Wherever his sword is, there are corpses in that place, this Duke of Wintel. Viscount Hines looked at the faces of these surprised people. and was delighted. Everything turns out the way he didn't want it to. The man continued to say that even in this case they would not ruin the honor of the Heinz family. How can they not give even the slightest dowry? But the Duke is too stubborn. People began to calm him down and say that if Duke Cayenne says so, what can he do? He doesn't want to offend the Duke by throwing something out. The Viscount was already thanking God. Now the Duke will not be able to do anything contrary to public opinion. He may say that instead of a dowry, he will have to invest the money in the trading business of the North. He called it a brilliant plan. He was brought back from his dreams to reality by the news that Duke Cayenne Wintel and Lady Atisha Heinz had arrived. The most insignificant wildflower the aristocracy had ever known had arrived. Now the gem that shines brightest in this room. The man told the others to watch the manna flow through her clothes and jewelry. The woman replied that if he spent so much on Miss Atisha, then it was true that he fell in love with her. Viscount Heinz, seeing this couple with outstretched arms, moved towards them. He said how glad he is that Atisha is finally getting married, but on the other hand, he is sad. It's hard to let go of the daughter he raised. He asked her if this was so, and asked her to come up to Daddy and hug him. Her father was always strict towards Atisha, and in general, he was a terrible father and never smiled at her. He showed his tender side only to her sister Larienne. The girl was sure that when he found out about her wedding, he would take her back to the Heinz mansion and the ban. Will such a father really celebrate her wedding? She rejected these thoughts. You can't fool her. Her father never loved her. Atisha pushed him away. The girl said he looked too happy for him. The Viscount asked what she was saying. His daughter is getting married. Of course he will be happy. The girl asked, is it not true that he is happy because she is marrying the Duke of Cayenne? The father was at a loss. His daughter was obedient, so why is she acting like this? Atisha continued, if that's not the case, is he happy she's leaving the house? She told her father that he always tried to drive her away and wanted her to die. Viscount Heinz laughed and said that he did not remember when he had said such a thing. He asked not to joke. The man asked why she upset her father so much. She better come over and hug him. Atisha is sad. Her father grabbed her shoulder and pulled her towards him. He asked if she was afraid that it would become known that she had hypermania syndrome. If the truth comes out, what will happen to her wedding? Atisha Heinz did not expect such a threat from her father. The Viscount continued to say that the Duke would then have big problems. The girl wanted to answer him. He interrupted her. The man said he didn't want this. He wants to maintain a close relationship with the Wintel's family. Therefore, Atisha must stop rioting in vain. Her father ordered her to hurry up and pretend that she had come to hug her father. The girl looked at him and thought, tomorrow is the last day of the banquet. The day after tomorrow, she will leave for the north. She can tolerate him for these 2 days. As always, if she listens to her father one more day, the voice of her future husband brought her out of her thoughts. The Duke ordered the Viscount to stop this. The man turned pale and tried to justify himself by saying that it was not what he thought. Cayenne of Wintel asked what he was doing. In response, he asked him for forgiveness. He was so happy to see his daughter that he completely forgot to greet him. The man turned to the Duke again and asked him to be generous and forgive him for the sake of his daughter, because soon they would become relatives. The Duke thought that in front of him was just a snob who is not against oppression and violence against the weak, but stoops before the strong. He turned to Atisha, but the Viscount interrupted him, saying that he and his daughter urgently needed to talk about the wedding, or rather about the dowry. The man thought that he would make the Duke bend before him. Cayenne of Wintel turned to Atisha and said that she wanted to break up with the Heinz family. Has her opinion changed? The girl replied that her opinion would always be that way. My father looked at it from the side and wondered what they were talking about. He decided to distract the Duke. Duke Cayenne here is a video to him that the Heinz family does not need to burden themselves with any worries related to their marriage. The Viscount did not believe what he heard. Did the Duke really hear what he said to that aristocrat? No, it's impossible to do it that fast. The man replied that the Duke said that he would not accept a dowry. If so, he suggests setting a wedding date as soon as possible. The Duke asked what was unclear in his words. He said the Heinz family doesn't have to worry about anything. Nothing to do with their marriage. The man froze in place. Cayenne of Wintel continued that Lady Atisha will renounce the Heinz surname as of today. This means that she will have nothing to do with the Heinz family. The Viscount asked him how to understand this. Atisha is his daughter. How can he do it without her family's consent? How dare he even? Everyone was warned that Lassis Ignavan, His Majesty the Emperor was entering. The man came in and noted that it was very noisy and almost everyone was drunk. He approached Kayan saying that he was the last one to know about his wedding and asked how it all started. He asked His Majesty to do what he had to do first. Lassus replied that he would not leave him alone. Kayan asked him to be quiet. Etisha's father intervened in their conversation, telling Your Majesty that he was honored to meet him and introducing himself as a viscount from the Heinz family. Lassus Ignavan answered him that he was asking for forgiveness. He is the same person who dared to exclude his daughter from the family. The viscount asked what he was talking about. The emperor laughed and said that it seemed Duke Kayan had not told him yet. The duke entrusted ownership of part of the capital territory to Etisha Heinz, and as he knows the owners of capital territories are given a title, Etisha's father asked again. Lassus asked if he needed to explain in more detail. It is not the aristocrats who inherit family lands who receive a new surname, but those who inherit new territory. All this means is that Miss Etisha is no longer part of the Heinz family. The emperor smiled at Kayan and showed a thumbs up. Duke Kayan came closer to the viscount and turned to him and asked if he now understood. He, in turn, could not even move from the unexpected news. The duke took out a tablet from his pocket and said that Lady Etisha was now a baroness. He continued that this is why she is no longer part of the Heinz family. Therefore, there is no need to treat Wintels as relatives of the Heinz family. The man came even closer to Viscount Heinz and told him to try not to have vain hopes. Just because Etisha and he are getting married, and let him not even think of threatening him. The Viscount did not know what to do next. Now the Duke himself is standing in front of him, who wants him to get out of here. Behind him stands the Emperor, who dared to remove Etisha from his family. There were groups of people around them who were shocked by what was happening. The man did not know at all what to do in this situation, but then it dawned on him. He rushed to Etisha and asked if she had arranged all this. What did she say to the Duke and His Majesty? The man fell at the feet of the Duke and said that this was not what he thought. He doesn't know what his daughter said about the Heinz family, but it's not true. In his family, their daughters were raised quite strictly. Not all parents who have daughters are like them. This is simply so that his daughters become worthy women. The Viscount rushed to Etisha again. He started shouting that they fed and raised her, and she repaid them in this way. I just abandoned my parents. Is this what they taught her? The girl could not answer because she had a lump in her throat from such accusations. Viscount Heinz said this was unfair. He asked the Duke to listen to him. Here Etisha told her father that she never said anything bad about her family. Everyone paid attention to her. The girl said that she was leaving the family. This is what he wanted. The Viscount asked what she was saying. Etisha came even closer to him and told him to remember what happened 7 years ago. She was 13 years old then. They and their father rode home in a carriage. Then the father swung at her. Etisha fell and hit herself painfully. The man told her that she was pathetic. When she met those robbers, they should have killed or kidnapped her. The father added that not seeing her is a breath of fresh air. The Viscount reached for the door handle and opened it. A strong wind blew. The girl covered her face with her hands. She screamed at her dad, who only told her to get out of here. The man said that she would die soon anyway, so it would be better for her to just disappear. He pushed her. Etisha recalled this with tears in her eyes. She will never forget this incident. If the coachman had not stopped the carriage, then the carriage would have crushed her. They must answer for this. The Viscount replied that it was such an old story. Everything is fine with her in the end. Their family doctor helped her, so that there were no scars left. The girl began to deny it. She has a scar from that day. It didn't matter how much it hurt her. She should have left home already then. She was a few years late, but now she's definitely leaving. Finally, she asked not to look for her anymore. The Duke turned to Viscount Heinz and asked if this is what he calls strict education. The man was afraid to look the Duke in the eyes and tried to quickly find an excuse. Kayan of Wintel advised him not to even think about throwing anything away. The Viscount began to be indignant. He thought that Duke Kayan, Emperor Ignavan, and even Etisha, they are all conspiring against him and his Heinz family. The spectators of this quarrel were already discussing with all their might what was happening. Now they have found out who Viscount Heinz really is. The woman said that it was not about love or dowry. She immediately sensed something was wrong when the Duke spoke about it. The Baron said that if he were in his place, he would lock himself in his house. What a disgrace. The Viscount only now noticed these people. He rushed to the front doors in shame. The Emperor applauded this performance and now asked for the music to be returned. Atisha and Kayan of Wintel all continued to stand in silence until Atisha spoke first. The girl smiled and asked the Duke if it was true that she would become a baroness. The man replied that it was true. This was specifically done to sever any ties with the Heinz family. He continued to say that at noon today he transferred the land to the mansion. These lands are under the direct jurisdiction of the emperor. Since it is temporary, ownership and title will disappear after a certain period of time. During this time, they will already be in the north, so no problem. Atisha thought that it was interesting how many steps forward he thought through everything. It started working literally within a day. It's impressive for a man to have that ability, while he still controls a huge territory of the north. The girl bowed low to the Duke and sincerely thanked him for helping her. The man replied that he was glad that he could help her. He was worried that he might do something wrong. Atisha started denying it and saying that she was truly grateful to him. He is her savior. She was glad that this time he did not deny that he had helped her and accepted her gratitude. Kayan added that the mansion is hers and that's not a lie. He won't disappear. She looked at him and asked the Duke why he was so kind to her. After all, for him, she is just the one who will become his fake duchess. The man could not answer but only clenched his fists tighter. Atisha smiled and thought that of course this is the Duke. He doesn't know how to express his emotions. She knows about the rumors that are circulating around Duke Kayan. However, the girl noted that the Duke was very caring with her. The man said that he thought Lady Atisha didn't understand something. Before he could finish speaking, the emperor called out to him saying that he had finally found him. Lassis said that of course it's too late, but congratulations on the wedding. The man asked if he had announced the wedding without a notary. He gave him a mansion and even land. Atisha noticed that the Duke looked disappointed. The emperor continued to say that he thought Kayan would always be lonely, but he suddenly decided to get married. He doubts that this is really the Duke of Wintel he knows. Kayan asked him to move away and stop talking nonsense. Emperor Ignaven turned to Lady Atisha and said that then he would leave Kayan to her. He also gave her a wedding gift. If she sent a message using it, it would reach him immediately. If she needs help, she can turn to him. Atisha thanked His Majesty with a look of surprise on her face. The man said that he would send a certificate of noble title and a letter of appointment by tomorrow. For now, they should enjoy the banquet. Atisha thought that she had received a wonderful gift. If she carries it in her hands, she may lose it, so the girl put it around her neck. The Duke walked up to her and looked at this pendant. He thought about it. The man said that they would probably have to return to the mansion early and asked if she would mind. The girl agreed with the proposal and said that she was also a little tired. Kayan asked if she felt bad. Atisha replied that no, just in connection with recent events. In the end, the girl replied that she was just a little tired. She thought that it had indeed been a long day for her. And tomorrow will be the last day of the banquet, and after it she will leave for the north. Duke Kayan shook hands with her and they left the banquet together for their mansion. At this time at the Heinz mansion, an angry Viscount Heinz returned home. Larian Heinz ran up to him and asked how it went. Where is Atisha? Did he bring her home? His wife asked if he had talked about the dowry with the Duke of Cayenne. The man shouted at them to shut up. Madame Dorothea began to be indignant and asked why he was shouting at them. The Viscount kicked the chair and shouted that everything had not gone the way he wanted. He slapped himself in the face and said it was the end. They are doomed. The daughter asked again, doomed? What does he mean? The man sat on the sofa saying that he has no idea how Atisha seduced this Duke of Cayenne, but she received land and title. She completely severed ties with the Heinz family. Larian was shocked. What do you mean Atisha is no longer Heinz? She said that he would take her north on business or something like that. Atisha must return home, she's just her doll. 10 years ago, she first met Atisha when their parents introduced them. Atisha was shy and looked out behind her father in surprise. Later, as Larian was walking down the corridor, she heard footsteps behind her. She turned around and saw Atisha, then she shouted what she needed. Atisha turned to her sister Lari and said that she thinks that she is the most beautiful in the whole world. She's truly incredible. Everyone loves her, and Atisha loves her very much too. Larian thought it was so cute. She hopes to always have Atisha on her leash. Will not go out, meet friends, or fall in love with someone. She will be with her forever. She will forever be hers alone. When Atisha suddenly fell ill with hypermania syndrome, she was afraid to imagine her dead body. She had no choice but to lock her in the room. But now, is she leaving forever? Will she never see her again? The girl decided to act. She will return it. Larian Heinz ordered the carriage to be prepared. Madame Dorothea tried to stop her, but the girl did not hear her. All she thought was that she should have done this from the very beginning. Only she can bring her back. She will never let her go again, even if she has to die next to her. Her mother shouted at her that she couldn't do it. The Duke ordered her to stay here if she doesn't comply. Larian asked her if she thought it was important now. She screamed to let her go. Dorothea ordered to be taken to her room. Larian Hines tried her best to free herself. The mother just shouted to the servants to be more careful. If she gets hurt, they will be punished. She ordered to lock her up until the end of the banquet and make sure that she did not leave. In the evening, the Duke and a young lady arrived at the mansion. All the servants were already waiting for them. Etisha approached the maid and said that she would now show her to her room. The girl followed her, but suddenly she noticed that Marin had turned in the wrong direction. The Duchess asked to stop and asked why they were going to the right because her room was on the wrong side. The maid replied that the Duchess's bedroom had only been prepared yesterday. From now on, this is her room. After all, she is their Duchess. Etisha was a little shocked because she was not yet used to this status. She blushed a little. She was pleased to hear that she was a Duchess. Cayenne of Wintel told her that if she felt uncomfortable, she could use the previous room. The girl replied that they had prepared it for her. She could not refuse. Duke Cayenne walked along the corridor to his room. Behind them came Marin and Etisha. The lady noticed this and assumed that their rooms were next to each other. They stopped near the huge doors and the maid told Etisha that this was her room now. The girl blushed very much and did not understand why there were two doors. The Duke entered the next door. The Duchess was stunned. She looked at this door and asked Marin if this meant that the door through which Duke Cayenne entered. The girl interrupted her and said yes, this is the Duke's room. Etisha was a little worried because her room was next to the Duke's. But she's a Duchess now. She needs to get used to this already. The lady became determined and said that she wanted to come in. But when she walked in, she was delighted her room was truly spotless. Etisha thought that she was so nervous because she was right next to his room. The room is much larger than she thought. Marin gave her a quick tour of her new room. She showed me the bedroom, the wardrobe, and told me about the small study area. The girl continued that if she looked there, but Etisha interrupted her and said that she did not have to explain everything. She smiled and said that they would still leave for the north tomorrow. Etisha continued that it would be more important if the maid helped her undress. The lady had already taken off her heavy dress and began to take a hot bath. Marin asked Etisha if she would leave the pendant. She answered yes. She told her to remove her dress and jewelry. She will also keep the ring with her. The maid took the dress in her hands and wished Lady Etisha good night. Etisha enjoyed this moment. She was lying in the middle of a luxurious room in her mansion. The girl lay there and thought only that the bed was so soft and warm. It also smells good. The guest room was also comfortable, but this room gives a feeling of security. It's like being in an embrace. Etisha suddenly opened her eyes and found herself thinking about the Duke. The girl thought about what was wrong with her. Why did she think about the Duke? She couldn't believe that she liked the Duke. It cannot be. Not much time passed. As a child, she had no friends at all because of Larian Hines. She cannot speak normally, not only with her peers, but also with other people. She didn't understand why she felt so interested in someone, although she knew practically nothing about love. But still she thinks about the Duke. Is it because he's kind to her? Kind and soft. This is the first time she has met such a person. Etisha soon realized that this seemed to be it. The same love. Well, what if she really likes him? She received help from him and wears his family ring. He sleeps in the room opposite his. Is she becoming a real Duchess? However, she is here for the sake of the Duke's mistress. Just a fake. The girl could not sleep because of her thoughts. She stood up and walked to the far side of the room. She saw a large curtain on the wall. Etisha began to think about why he was here. The thought occurred to her that perhaps this was a hidden painting. When she moved it a little, she saw the door handle. The lady didn't understand why she was here, and so she decided to open it a crack. For some reason, Etisha did not think that behind this door was the Duke's room. The Duke of Cayenne lay in his bed without any outer clothing. She felt like a complete fool when the man asked what she wanted. The girl began to apologize, saying that she did not know that the rooms were connected. Cayenne replied that this is how rooms for spouses are usually made. Etisha remembered how the maid wanted to tell her about this. The girl asked for forgiveness for the intrusion and was about to leave, but the Duke stopped her. The man said that he wanted to talk to her about something. He got up from the bed and walked closer to Etisha. She herself was at a loss and did not know where to look. The girl blushed very red when the Duke came close to her. She herself didn't understand when he managed to get so close. Atisha wanted to move back a little, but she stepped on her nightie and realized that she was falling. Cayenne of Wintel reacted instantly and grabbed her with a slight movement of his hand. She found herself in the embrace of his strong arm, pressed against his hot body. The man asked if she was okay. Atisha replied that she was fine. He pulled her a little closer to him so that her feet lifted off the floor a little. The girl did not understand what was happening, but when she looked at the Duke, he looked thoughtful. When he called her name, she was already all red as a beetroot. He pressed her so hard that she was standing on her toes. Atisha pulled away from his body and, looking into his eyes, asked what was happening. The Duke touched the doorknob and said that her room had the same lock. If it closes, you won't be able to access it from this side, so she can be calm. Atisha thanked her, but in her mind she didn't understand how she could think about such a thing a second ago. The Duke asked to be excused for this. Atisha didn't quite understand what he meant. A moment later, the man took the girl in his arms. The lady was very scared. Cayenne explained this action by saying that it was simply easier to check the damaged area. He carefully placed the fragile girl on his bed. Cayenne of Wintel knelt down in front of her to examine her leg. The girl was embarrassed that she saw the Duke on his knees in front of her. She thought that she must have fallen asleep, and it was all a dream. Duke Cayenne turned to her and asked her to lift her dress. The girl asked again. The Duke replied that this way he could examine her ankle. It would be rude if he picked it up himself. Atisha did not believe that the Duke himself wanted to examine her. He will kneel in front of her while her skirt is pulled up. She couldn't even dream of something like this. Atisha slowly lifted her nightie and offered her leg to the Duke. The man carefully began to examine her. The girl noticed that such silence embarrassed her too much. She asked the Duke what he wanted to talk to her about. Cayenne lowered her leg and said that this concerns the maid Marin. The girl asked again. He explained that the maid wanted to go north with her. It looks like Marin wants to continue serving her. Atisha couldn't believe she said that. The north is far away. If she wants it, then Atisha is not against it, but it will be difficult to get back. Cayenne said that she has no relatives. She will not be sorry to leave the capital. Atisha thought that there is one thing, but she will die soon, and then… The Duke said the sprain was not serious. She will feel better in a day or two. Atisha thought that he had a lot of experience on the battlefield, so he knows better. Cayenne said that their family doctor is in the north, so they will need to find someone else to treat her. He will ask someone to find him right now. The girl began to refuse help, saying that it was already late, and it was not that serious. The man was about to refute, but Lady Atisha began to claim that everything was really fine with her. The Duke warned that the leg could swell even more tomorrow. Taking her leg in his hands, he asked if she still wanted to call a doctor. Atisha turned completely red. The man was focused on her ankle. He added that she would not be able to dance at the banquet tomorrow, and asked if she still wanted to call a doctor. The girl once again began to convince him that everything was fine. She will be cured tomorrow. Duke Cayenne noticed the pendant on the girl's neck and asked if it was a gift from His Highness. Atisha replied, yes, she thinks it's very important, so she wears it. He asked whether even when she was sleeping. The girl answered with surprise that yes. Suddenly she jumped up and told the Duke that she was fine, so she would go back to her room. Cayenne replied that it was already dawn, but good. He added that if something bothers her, she can contact him at any time. The girl replied that she would do so. She asked him not to worry and wished him to have a good night's sleep. As soon as she reached her room, she immediately hid under the blanket out of shame. Atisha was so embarrassed that she thought she wouldn't be able to sleep tonight. Third day of the banquet. The last day also ended well. Atisha's leg is fine. She enjoyed her last day in the capital. The Duke said that they would go to Laxan by carriage, and then to the north using a teleportation spell. Marine went with them on a long journey. Atisha was happy about this new beginning of her life. But then the girl noticed that they had not been leaving for a long time. A yellow-haired girl approached the carriage and wished her a good day. She said she was pleased to meet her, and introduced herself as Judith. The girl got into the carriage next to the Duke and told Atisha that she could simply call her Dith. She asked Cayenne if he was waiting for her. Atisha thought about her name, more precisely about how she presented herself. She only said her name. A noblewoman would not introduce herself like that. This could mean that perhaps she is a commoner. But not a single commoner would have thoughtlessly gotten into the same carriage with the Duke. If she were a maid, she would wear the appropriate outfit. Then she must be the Duke's very mistress. Atisha smiled at Dith and said she was glad to meet her. She was about to introduce herself as Atisha Hines, but she remembered the Emperor's words. He told her that she would soon become Wintel anyway, and she wouldn't need her old last name. It's better for her to use the surname that her mother had. Atisha introduced herself as Atisha L. She said that she was a baroness. The Duke apologized for not warning her about their companion. The man said that he could not tell her who she was yet. If people find out that she has come to the capital, there will be a fuss. Atisha replied that everything was fine. She understood this. Still, he must hide his mistress. There is nothing to be sad about. It was not long before she met the Duke. There is nothing between them. The man said that therefore, before it's too late, it's better to leave as soon as possible. He tensed and clenched his fists. The carriage moved away. They rode along a path through a dense forest. There was an awkward silence. Atisha kept thinking that it was so strange to meet the very mistress about whom there were rumors. She found herself thinking that these two were perfect for each other. Judith looks friendly and seems like a good person. Atisha wondered if that was why the Duke fell in love with her. There was such a good atmosphere between them. But when she intervened, they immediately became quiet. The girl closed her eyes for a second, and Kayan immediately asked if everything was okay with her. The man said that if she was feeling sick, they could stop to rest. Atisha immediately replied that she was fine and did not need to stop. Marin took a pillow and placed it under Lady Atisha. The girl thanked her. Atisha noticed Judith's incredulous gaze on herself. The carriage arrived in a small town called Laxon. The Duke announced that they had arrived and they could get out of the carriage. Atisha looked anxiously at the Duke's beautiful mistress. Marin noticed this and asked if everything was okay with her. Maybe she feels bad because of such a long journey? The girl replied that everything was fine and offered her hand to the Duke. But when she got out of the carriage, she unexpectedly stumbled and fell into the Duke's arms again. The man asked her to watch her step. Atisha couldn't believe it happened again. Once again, her lips are so close to the Duke's lips. In her thoughts, she asked the Duke what he was doing. "Dith is here! She'll be angry with him!" But the girl did not want to let go of his hand. Then she came to her senses. Atisha looked behind the Duke and saw a huge glowing building. She asked if this was a teleport. Kayan replied that it was him. His assistant approached the man and said that the teleport was ready. He added that the Duke had issues to resolve. Kayan asked if it was urgent. The man replied that this was regarding the investigation that he had ordered to be carried out. He quietly looked at Atisha. The Duke asked Atisha to wait for him here for a while. The girl replied that he should not worry about her. Kayan of Wintel and his assistant left, and Atisha was left alone with Judith. The girl heard Dith laugh quietly. She made a questioning face. Judith asked, "Isn't it that Kayan is quite difficult to deal with?" Atisha asked again, and Dith replied that it means she doesn't know what he's thinking about. "This is fine. No one knows." The girl said that Kayan is the same as always in childhood, and now he has not changed, so don't let Atisha get upset. Atisha wanted to object, but Judith interrupted her by saying that no one could take him away from her. After some time, the Duke returned to them and asked how long they had been waiting. The Duke's assistant said that Miss Judith could teleport with him and the maid Marine. Judith forced a smile and silently agreed with him. The man told the Duke that they would be the first. Kayan agreed and said that they would meet in the north. The assistant, the maid, and Miss Judith stood in the middle of the teleporter and disappeared a moment later. Atisha saw this and was delighted. She had never seen how a teleport worked before. Kayan of Wintel said that it was their turn now and asked to go there. The Duke stopped and turned to the girl, saying that before teleporting, he would like to tell her something. Atisha asked what exactly. Kayan replied that he wanted to tell the truth about Judith. There were other people in the carriage, so he could not talk about their relationship with Judith. He needs to make sure that only a few people know about it. The girl replied that she understood. She continued that, to be honest, he might not even speak. She still understands the situation. Kayan asked again. Atisha asked if she understood correctly that Miss Judith is the reason they are getting married. Having a fake duchess with you and spending time with a loving mistress. The Duke replied that it seemed she had misunderstood everything. He will tell her the truth. But the man asked to keep it a secret when she finds out the secret. Kayan of Wintel said that Judith is Wintel's weak point. That's why it needs to be hidden. Atisha did not understand how it could be Wintel's weak point and why it needs to be hidden. Too intense an explanation for wanting to hide your mistress. Is it because he can't tell the whole story? He was always expressionless, but now the girl is even more confused. The guy just started saying that Judith was theirs. But before he could finish speaking, he saw that Atisha was unwell. The man asked what was wrong with her, but the girl could not answer him. Tears rolled down her cheeks. Her heart was beating wildly. Atisha L covered her mouth with her hand to try to calm herself down. Hypermana syndrome began to take effect. She fell to her knees, but the Duke immediately rushed to her. The girl was hysterical. The man didn't know how to help her. After some time, Atisha began to calm down a little. The girl began to apologize to the Duke, to which he replied that this was unnecessary. He took her and pressed her tightly to him and began to stroke her hair a little. The Duke told her not to be afraid and reassured her with words that everything would be fine. Half an hour later, Atisha rose from his lap and declared that she was already better. She lay on the Duke's lap for so long and enjoyed his embrace. She thinks she's fine now, and the pain is gone. Atisha thought that he might think she was faking it. Duke Kayan asked what she was saying. She can't be okay. The girl said it was true. The first symptoms are short-lived. They say that in the later stages of the disease the condition worsens, but for now it is tolerable. The man replied that if she was talking about the syndrome, then he knew it. He wants to say that she is not okay at all. The Duke asked if these were the first syndromes. The girl answered yes. Kayan said that means she has until the next ones appear. Atisha L replied that it seems so. According to the doctor, at first the intervals between pains are long, and then, towards the end, they become shorter and shorter. Until then, she will have enough time to live her life. The man listened and replied that it was clear to him. Atisha began to convince him again that she was fine. The Duke said that he thought she had better rest for a day, and they would go north tomorrow. Teleport mana can affect her body. The girl replied that everyone was already there and only us remained. Kayan said it's no big deal. It's actually good that they are together. If someone had seen them, the situation would have become more complicated. Atisha looked down and thought that this was true. The Duke said that he didn't know what might happen, so he'd better not call anyone. Finally, he suggested spending this day together. Atisha did not believe what she heard. He spent a long time on the battlefield, so it is more convenient for him to do without a retinue. But Atisha, there are no maids here, so she might feel uncomfortable. The girl replied that she did not mind. The Duke was sincerely worried about her, and she was no longer in pain. Atisha thanked the Duke for being worried about her. She told him that he was a kind and good person. Kayan replied that he is not as good as she thinks, but among everyone she has ever met, he is the kindest. Atisha doesn't think she will ever meet someone like him again. The girl suggested we go shopping because there is so much here. Each merchant called to him, shouting that the goods in his store were cheaper. Atisha finally understood what it was like to walk without a servant. Kayan apologized for causing her inconvenience, to which the girl replied that she was now enjoying the walk. The Duke was surprised at this. Miss added that she always wanted to experience something like this, at least once. For example, walking down an unknown street to an unknown store and buying things that you have never seen. Suddenly, Kayan of Wintle stopped. Atisha asked what happened. The guy pointed towards the nearest store and asked if she wanted to go there. Miss was beside herself with joy. The Duke said she was interested in the store from the very beginning. He offered to look into it if she wanted. The girl was very embarrassed. Did he really notice it? Kayan added that besides this, she seems to like sweets. Atisha said that this is not the only issue. Larian likes sweets, so they often went to similar stores. However, her parents never bought her anything. The girl became sad. The man walked towards the store and opened the door for her, inviting her. Without thinking for a long time, Atisha entered. She couldn't even dream about this. The salesman greeted them and asked if they were interested in looking at anything in particular. Atisha was absolutely delighted with such a huge display case. Duke Kayan asked if she liked anything here. The girl asked to wait a little because there was so much going on here, and her eyes were running wild. She remembers how her father asked her if she still wanted to buy something. The man said to ask his sister for some. 1 bucket is enough. Don't let her be greedy. Atisha then looked at Larian and asked if she would share with her. My sister started shouting that these were all hers. She chose them and let Atisha buy them for herself. Unexpectedly, Madame Dorothea intervened in the conflict. She asked Atisha if she was really going to take the sweets from her dear Larian. She should be grateful to her father. The girl began to object, but the stepmother said that since she was insolent to her, she would not receive any sweets. Atisha asked the seller to show her the ones she pointed to. She also asked to show the one in front of them, and the little rabbit. The Duke finally realized that something was a rabbit. The seller replied that as she pleases. Atisha also wanted to get what she wanted. It seems that the childhood she lost is coming back to her. The girl also asked if they had sweets that were prepared only during the foundation banquet. The seller responded by asking if she was talking about gold candies and adding that they were still in stock. Atisha was delighted and said that then she would take them too. The Duke thought for a moment. He remembered that she had recently told him that he was very kind and sweet. Previously, he lived solely for himself and achieving his goals. He didn't care about his surroundings. He didn't show useless emotions to anyone. He trampled and stepped over all the obstacles on his way. And is he a sweet and kind person? Atisha is so happy because of some sweets. If someone provided a little help, then he already considers him a good person. However, the man closed his eyes. Atisha L. noticed that something was wrong. The girl asked if everything was okay. In response, he asked if she had finished choosing. Atisha was very embarrassed and answered yes. She asked if she had taken too much. The Duke replied that if such an opportunity arises, they will look here again. He put a bag of coins on the table and said that there was no need for change. The seller was shocked when he opened the bag. He thanked his dear customers and told them to come back again. Atisha was so happy with her shopping. She hugged her chocolate bunny tightly. The two of them walked in the evening along crowded streets. The girl asked the Duke to stop. The man looked questioningly. Atisha told him to take these golden candies. They say that if you put them in your mouth and make a wish, it will come true. Her wish was to leave the Heinz family, so now she has nothing to wish for. She thinks he should try these golden candies. The Duke said that he did not need it and told her to eat them herself. The girl was afraid that she was behaving too childishly and apologized for it. The Duke replied that he simply did not like sweets. Atisha wanted to answer something, but someone's voice interrupted her. The woman told Atisha that she seemed to have a wish that she wanted to make. She added that the young lady would soon have a long journey ahead of her. It also seems like she's not from here. Atisha didn't understand how she found out all this. The old lady said that she works as a fortune teller in this restaurant. If they eat in it, she will tell them fortunes. She asked if they were interested in knowing their fate. The Duke was silent. Atisha suggested that they have dinner at a restaurant. The man replied that as she wishes. They went into a restaurant and the Duke said that he would like me. Atisha added that she would do the same. The old woman put her magic ball on the table and began to tell fortunes. She began with the fate of the young lady. By destroying the indestructible, she sees a bright future. Happiness, bliss. There are difficulties ahead that need to be overcome. And as soon as this happens, she will find her happiness. The girl was glad to hear this. And now the old lady wants to look at the future of this nobleman. Suddenly something terrible happened. The ball suddenly began to emit strange lightning. One of them hit the old woman right in the eye. She screamed throughout the entire restaurant. Impenetrable darkness and pain and endless war. Fight, revenge, loneliness, and a sword piercing the sun and sky. Suddenly the ball fell to the floor and rolled. The clairvoyant doubled over in pain. Atisha asked if she was okay. The woman replied that this was a terrifying fate. She asked her to forgive her and ran out of the restaurant away from them. Atisha was wondering what it saw that made it run away so quickly. Cayenne said that he didn't think it was a real prophecy, and she shouldn't worry about it. This is nothing more than a play on words. Everyone can do this. He asked her to look at the ball. This type of ball is used by scammers. Atisha was very surprised by this. The man added that a real fortune teller would not work in such a place. He suggested finishing the meal and getting out of here. The girl was a little worried. It seems like it's all a lie, but didn't she say good things about her fate? Does Cayenne have secrets from her? Should he share them with her? Duke of the North? A war hero and a man who left his mistress to save his future wife. All she knows about him are rumors and unobvious things. Now she realizes that she knows nothing about Cayenne. What kind of person is he? What was his life like before her? What does the guy think about? What does he want? Atisha wants to know everything. The girl wanted to start eating, so she began to pray. It seemed to her that all her wishes had come true. I thought that I would just have to wait for the day of my death. But the longer she is around him, the more she wants to know about him. The girl decided to take one of the candies from the basket, and then Cayenne asked her, "Didn't Atisha say that she has no more desires?" The girl smiled awkwardly, unwrapping the candy. Miss replied that she thought there was still some left. This is weird. The Duke exhaled and said that, not at all. The girl's cheeks turned red. Atisha put that same golden candy in her mouth and thought it was very tasty. Sweeter than she thought? The girl asked her to fulfill her wish. The next day, Atisha and Duke Cayenne have come to a portal that will send them north. They stood up to him and Atisha said that she hoped they wouldn't worry. Cayenne replied that she should not worry, he had contacted them. They will be met. Atisha closed her eyes from a bright flash of light, and suddenly they were already standing in the middle of the snowy mountains. The girl could not believe that she was standing in the middle of such beauty, cold and beautiful. This is the land of the Duke of Wintel. Now having left the Heinz mansion, she feels alive again. No one will torture Atisha here, neither Larian nor her parents. She no longer needs to return to the house from which she tried so hard to escape. The man called Lady Atisha and said that it was cold here and asked her to come to him. The guy stopped for a second. He remembered how yesterday she was so sincerely happy about the chocolate bunny. Now she is also sincerely and childishly happy, either that she is in the north or that she is far from the Heinz house. Behind him, the Duke heard the voice of his assistant, Val de Prame. The man turned and saw Judith running towards him, saying that he was late and how she was waiting for him. She suggested that he quickly go to the mansion. Preparations for the banquet are completed. Cayenne pushed her away from him and asked what kind of banquet they were talking about. The girl told him that the lady had planned a banquet. She became involved with him after hearing the news of his marriage. The man asked if we were talking about his mother. Dith added that the guests will arrive soon. Atisha L. looked at them from the side and did not believe that she felt jealous. But she soon convinced herself that she had no need to be jealous. That's right, the Duke has Dith. Everything is fine. She was originally just a fake duchess. She is happy that she was able to walk this path with him. It must be nice to know that they are waiting for him here. Is it normal that she is jealous of Judith? That's why Atisha doesn't regret her wish. Duke Cayenne brought her out of her thoughts. The man called her name, and the girl turned to him. The Duke said that he heard that his mother was giving a banquet today. Atisha asked again. The guy replied that initially they had a day to prepare for it, but they arrived late and there was almost no time left. He added that Atisha should also attend the banquet, and asked if she would mind. The girl looked down and said that she would. She thought that she would soon disappear. The only ones who will remain here are the Duke and Dith. Atisha should be grateful to Dith. If the Duke hadn't had to look for the fake duchess, she would have remained at the Heinz estate. The girl declared that she would attend the banquet as the one who would become the Duchess of Wintel. Val de Prame told the Duke that they needed to go to the banquet as soon as possible. Cayenne of Wintel said that it was good and asked if anything had happened while he was away. The assistant replied that he had followed all his instructions. The Duke ordered him to come to him when the banquet was over. There is a separate assignment for him. Val de Prame declined and said that as he pleased. The Duke followed to the carriage. Atisha was already excited to see the Wintel's estate. The carriage moved. They drove along a road through a dense and snowy forest. Atisha, looking out the window, thought that the view from the window was very beautiful. She turned to the Duke and asked what mountain this was. Cayenne didn't understand what she was talking about. The man looked out the window and the girl pointed to a huge mountain. Cayenne of Wintel replied that she would understand when they got there. The girl looked more closely and was very surprised. It turned out that this was not a mountain, but the Wintel's estate. The carriage arrived at the castle. The Duke opened the door and offered his hand to Lady Atisha. The girl gave him her hand in response, but it was not Atisha but Judith. She thanked Duke Cayenne. The man abruptly removed his hand and rudely called her by her full name. The girl blushed a little. She said she had to go. The lady told her that she had bought her a new dress. The girl noticed that the lady was taking good care of her. Sometimes she even gives her something. She turned to Baroness Atisha and said that they would see each other at the celebration. Atisha blushed a little at her words and began to get out of the carriage. She asked the Duke if Dith was also invited to the banquet. The man replied that his mother had given Dith special permission. Atisha is sad, a mother who cares for her son's mistress like an azalea. While the Duke said that Dith is Wintel's weakness, she still doesn't understand him. They went to his estate and Cayenne turned to her to say something. The man said that he would pick her up before the banquet. Atisha replied that it was good. The servants offered to take her to her room. She followed him. The girl thought that no matter how you looked at it, it was strange. The banquet shouldn't happen so suddenly. Even when Larian threw a small party, preparations took at least a week. Atisha suddenly realized, perhaps it's all because her son brought his bride home and announced the wedding right away? The girl thought that the lady was probably angry. She organized a sudden banquet wanting to express her concern in this way. Atisha L. is a lady who has no name in high society and a son who has such merit. He is going to marry someone whose identity is unknown. Surely at the banquet she wants to find out what kind of person Atisha is. The girl had never been to this kind of event before. She suddenly introduced Larian, who said to let her tell her about high society. Etisha exhaled. Under no circumstances should she screw up at the banquet. Guests at the event were whispering about Etisha Hines, the lady who will become Duchess of Wintel. They had never heard of her before. The invitees informed each other that the girl was no longer Hines. Now she is a baroness. They heard that this title was bestowed by the emperor. And how can a baroness become the wife of a duke? This is all very strange. The duke does not often visit the capital. 3 years ago he went to war. The guests do not think that his meeting with the baroness was an accident. The guests really wanted to know the whole story and wondered who could tell them. Countess Monmouth apologized to Madame Cyrillaise and said that she must know much more than they do. Cyrillaise was a past duchess. Before her marriage, her name was well known in the capital's high society. After the wedding, she led the north. In other words, she is the queen of northern high society. The lady leaned over and told the countess that she didn't quite understand what she was talking about. The guests continued to have fun, and Dance Monmouth got nervous. Mrs. Cyrillaise thinks they are all mistaken. Today's banquet is dedicated to the Duke's marriage. They wanted to share this happiness with them, so they organized a banquet. Cyrillaise hopes that no one will fuss over rumors during the holiday. Suddenly, it was announced that the Duke of Cayenne and Baroness Etisha L. had arrived at the celebration. The guests dispersed to make way for Madame Cyrillaise. Cayenne of Wintel bowed his head and asked his mother how her health was. Etisha bowed, introduced herself, and said that she was glad to meet her. Mrs. Cyrillaise looked at her with contempt, and Etisha thought that she seemed furious. The girl looked at the Duke out of the corner of her eye, but he stood calmly, smiling a little. Mentally, she asked the Duke if everything was okay, but then the lady approached her. She greeted her and said that she heard that Etisha was going to marry her son. Etisha smiled and said that the Duke accepted her marriage proposal. Mrs. Cyrillaise did not understand what a marriage proposal meant. The girl explained that she was the first to propose marriage, and the Duke agreed. The Queen immediately said angrily that this was simply incredible. Etisha realized that she had said something wrong. She turned around to look at the Duke's face at that moment. He remained the same, smiling. The girl didn't understand why he was smiling. Maybe the Queen will believe her and let her stay? The girl forced herself to think what to do. Etisha clenched her fists tightly. She knew she needed to prove herself. A celebrity always attracts attention, and the words she utters will reach everyone's ears. Etisha L. offered her hand to the mistress and asked if she had the honor of inviting her to the first dance. Usually, the partner for the first dance is chosen by someone from the family, and for the second with a lover. An invitation to the first dance shows that she wants to be part of her family. Even if Etisha is refused, she will be able to dance with the Duke. If she dances with him, she will be able to attract attention, to such an extent that no one will be interested in his mistress. The lady replied to the Baroness that this was a stunning proposal. Etisha L. thought she would say that Cyrillaise continued to think about the offer of a first dance with her. But then, unexpectedly, Judith entered the hall, and all attention fell on her. The guests began to gossip that this girl could be the same mistress of the Duke of Cayenne. People didn't understand what she forgot here. They thought that perhaps someone had invited her. Dith approached Miss Cyrillaise and thanked her for inviting her. The Queen replied that she was pleased to see Judith at the banquet. Etisha thought that she was invited by none other than Mrs. Cyrillaise. She did not accept the Baroness's offer to dance, but immediately decided to greet her mistress. Grandpa was upset because it was supposed to be a celebration of marriage. The Duke helped her sever all ties with the Hines family, and in return she was to become a fake duchess. That was their deal. But now the mistress greeted Judith in front of everyone. This means she can be close to the Duke, the perfect plan. Does he really need a fake duchess? Now everyone looks at her as if she were a lonely island in the sea, a distant island that no one would even think of setting foot on. Her role ends here. If only she knew it would all end like this. And she is stupid. She hoped that some candy could fulfill her wish. Etisha felt that she was in pain, bitter and unpleasant. Suddenly the Duke turned to his mother. The man said that she thoughtlessly invited Judith, and it didn't occur to her that Etisha would be unpleasant. Cayenne added that she should explain herself to the guests. The lady replied that she could not afford it. Duke Cayenne once again asked her to clarify this misunderstanding. Etisha was surprised that the Duke stood up for her. The girl looked at him, and in response the Duke only hugged him tighter. Those invited continued to wait to see what would happen next. The lady nevertheless replied that it seemed that it was still worth explaining. She raised this child as if she were her own. Even though she is a commoner, she sees Dith as her daughter, which is why she is here. Atisha L. was shocked and did not understand what it all meant. Cyrillise continued the story. When she learned that Cayenne had decided to get married, she felt it necessary to invite Dith to this banquet. Cayenne is her son, and Judith is her adopted daughter. It's normal for families to get together on such a beautiful day. The audience was shocked. They believed that Judith was Cayenne's lover, but not her sister. Then she moved on to Baroness Atisha. The woman apologized because it might have made her feel uncomfortable. Mrs. Cyrillise quietly added that she was happy to learn about Cayenne's marriage. Atisha couldn't believe it. The woman said that she could not sleep, so she suddenly arranged this banquet. Moreover, Cayenne arrived here a day later than planned. She was very worried. Finally, the lady added that she was sorry. She did this without thinking things through properly. Cyrillise extended her hand to Atisha L., inviting her to dance. The girl was glad that the mistress was not angry with her after all. Mrs. Cyrillise admitted that she was truly grateful for her desire to marry her son. She will be happy to dance, not the first dance. The girls walked out to the middle of the hall. The guests didn't even know that everything would be like this. The Duke's mistress turns out to be the adopted daughter of Mrs. Cyrillise. Obviously, they shouldn't get involved in this. Mrs. Cyrillise and Atisha L. began to dance the first dance at the banquet. The woman asked the Baroness to take care of her only son. She will do everything possible to help them with the wedding ceremony, so Atisha can ask her for anything. The girl thanked her and said that she would definitely contact her. Cyrillise was embarrassed that the girl called her mistress. She told her that she could call her mother, she won't mind. Atisha was very surprised by this. The lady asked her not to think anything bad, she didn't force her at all. She waited a long time for Cayenne to have a worthy girl and get married. The woman tried her best to find him a suitable bride, but Mother laid out 5 photographs of girls, contenders for the Duke's heart, on the table. She told the Duke that they were all good. The lady began to talk about the first girl but was refused in response. The woman was very upset because he didn't even look at them. Duke Cayenne turned around and said that he had business to do and left the room. Cyrillise lowered her head and said that she just hoped Cayenne would find someone he could feel at ease with. The mistress took Miss Atisha L's hands and looked her straight in the eyes. The woman admitted that she wanted her to become such a person for Cayenne, the one who will be his support for the rest of his life. Atisha hoped that this would be the case. It's time for the second dance between Atisha and Duke Cayenne. The man approached her. The Duke said that he thought that his mother was just shy. He added that she is even more happy about his marriage to Atisha than he is. The man bowed and offered his hand to the Baroness. The girl became embarrassed. The second dance is always reserved for your lover. They started their dance. Atisha told the Duke that she was surprised. She thought his mother was strict. She didn't think she would treat her well. The Duke replied that this only works within the family. Atisha realized that the reason Mrs. Cyrillise was treating her so well was because she would become her son's bride. But if it turns out that the marriage was a fake, the lady will not tolerate lies. Atisha L. closed her eyes tightly and told herself that this shouldn't happen. The couple finished their dance, and Atisha bowed slightly to the audience. Rumors quickly spread among the guests about a commoner who was sheltered and raised by Mrs. Cyrillise. They were discussing what Madame said she had picked her up for. Judith is not a pet. People noticed her beautiful hair and said that they too would like to raise such a commoner. But it was clear what would happen next if you let such a person under your wing. One woman said that she didn't know what she was doing, but she was clearly causing trouble for the Duke of Cayenne. There were rumors that she was his mistress. They won't know the truth. Maybe she tricked the Duke and became his mistress. The girl stood in tears. Miss Manhwa came up to her and asked what happened. In response, she heard only the Duke's name. When Dith turned 12, she became the adopted daughter of Mrs. Cyrillise. From then on, she grew up in the castle with Cayenne like brother and sister. Duke Cayenne was educated as a nobleman, but Judith could not be near him because she is not from a noble family. She and Cayenne were so-called brother and sister, but while the guy became the ruler of the north, Dith continued to sit closed in the castle. Cayenne's heart was like a cold wasteland. Nobody could melt it. Previously, he was not interested in relationships with any of the girls. And then Judith thought that it meant that the only girl next to him would be her. She used to think so, but now everything has changed with this Atisha. Mrs. Cyrillise invited her to a banquet. It seemed to her that the time had come to announce to the people that she and Cayenne had vowed to be brother and sister. But the first dance at the celebration, and even the second, did not become her star. Manhwa told her to look, but Judith continued to stand without moving. Tears were about to roll down her face. She kept thinking about how she had been with Kayan for so long. Monmad found it funny that the commoner ignored her words. After Mrs. Monmad did not receive any answer, she began to shout that this was impudence and asked if Dith had gone deaf. She turned her fan and hit Judith in the face with all her might. The girl was screaming about how dare she ignore her. Does she really think she can call herself the Duke's daughter? Dith grabbed her burning cheek and still did not understand why she was hit. She started calling Kayan and Mrs. Cyrillise, but Monmad had already swung at her, shouting that it was a shame and disgrace. She ordered her to kneel down and ask for her forgiveness now. Suddenly, a man stood in front of Judith, covering the girl with his body. He asked her to calm down, saying that today was such a wonderful day. They are at Wintel Castle at the Duke's wedding banquet. He asked if she was really going to beat the adopted daughter of Mrs. Cyrillise on such a day. The girl could not believe that Judith began to defend the Marquis of Hexion. Judith herself couldn't believe it. The man said Monmad shouldn't bother punishing her. He'll figure it out himself. Mrs. Monmad didn't even know what to answer, so she simply remained silent. Hexion leaned closer to her and said that he was worried that Mrs. Monmad would ruin her beautiful fan. Hexion grabbed Judith by the hand and forcibly pulled him along the castle corridor. The girl did not understand at all what was happening. Suddenly the Marquis stopped. He turned to her and told her that she should come back. Dith froze, not understanding what he was talking about. She looked at him up close and thought that he seemed very handsome. Those red eyes like blood and ashen hair. If Duke Kayan looks like he stepped out of some fairy tale. The Marquis of Hexion is like a demon who seduces people, Judith asked again. The man replied that there was a place where they were waiting for her. She replied that Mrs. Cyrillise had invited her. This was the first banquet in her life. Hexion took her chin and asked what was wrong with her expression at the Duke's wedding celebration. He added that it looked pathetic. She didn't answer when called. The girl abruptly removed the Marquis's hand and shouted that she already knew this. Hexion said that he did not know why the lady called her to the banquet. The Marquis added that it was sad that it wasn't someone like her couldn't stay here. The girl asked all this because she is a commoner, and in response, Hexion laughed loudly. Miss Judith asked what made him laugh so much. Hexion replied that she was not prepared for anything. If she is the adopted daughter of Mrs. Cyrillise, then she should behave appropriately. And if she is Kayan's mistress, you must play your part. The man told her that she could not stand it. He asked if she saw the elite at the banquet. This is what happens on the battlefield. Therefore it is better for her to go back. Dith started screaming for him to tell her how to become Kayan's lover, how to become a duchess. Meanwhile, at the banquet, Atisha L. met new ladies. One miss welcomed Atisha to the northern lands and invited her to come to their estate when the time appeared. Another girl invited her to a tea party. Atisha thanked her and said that she would definitely come. Her face was burning and it seemed like she had too much wine. As expected, it was a tough day. She thought that Judith was the Duke's mistress, but it turned out that she was the adopted daughter of the lady and Kayan's sister. Usually royals don't really get involved with commoners, especially such important figures as the Duke. The girl understood why Duke Kayan said that about Judith. She remembered his words that Judith was the Wintel's weakness, the existence of which needed to be hidden. Atisha wondered why Mrs. Cyrillise decided to raise her. Is there something she doesn't know? Surely there are many things. After the banquet, Mrs. Cyrillise approached the Baroness and said that she was good today. The girl thanked her, calling her madam. The woman had already started to say that she could call her mother, but suddenly she stopped. Atisha asked if it was true, but the lady replied that it was nothing and asked her to pretend that nothing had happened. Miss did not expect to see the strict Mrs. Cyrillise with her gentle side. The girl was embarrassed and thought it was very cute. She apologized, saying she was sorry and calling the lady Mom. Cyrillise froze in surprise. Atisha thanked her again, but called her mother. The girl looked at the mistress and thought that looking at her, you might think that she was angry. But in reality, she is confused. The girl thought it was very cute. Atisha said that she was really happy that her mother received her with such cordiality. Cyrillise replied that not everything is so smooth. The banquet was organized in a hurry. There are some shortcomings. Atisha said that she would try to become a good daughter-in-law to repay her kindness. She said that in that case the lady could also call her differently. Not a baroness, although she is still surprised by the title. She took her mother's hand. And the lady asked what to call her. Then Atisha replied that she was her daughter. With my daughter, Cyrillise looked at her sternly and with embarrassment. The lady snatched her hand from Atisha's hands, but immediately realized and began to ask for forgiveness. She saw Kayan coming towards them and said that she had to go. She has so much to do. We need to prepare for the wedding and the bride's wedding dress and jewelry. All this has been kept in the Wintle family for several generations. We need to take care of all this. They must organize a luxurious wedding celebration that will go down in history. Cyrillese added that it was already late and suggested we discuss this over tea tomorrow. The woman was very embarrassed, and Atisha was more and more touched by this each time. Finally, she called her daughter and immediately decided to leave the hall. The Duke said that his daughter-in-law appeared, and they immediately stopped paying attention to their son. Atisha calmed him down and said that his mother was very worried about him. The man looked carefully and added that he was going to introduce her to the castle after the end of the banquet. But it seems she drank too much. Atisha agreed with this. The Duke said that in that case, he would escort her to her room. Atisha was embarrassed. The man offered Atisha his hand and invited him to go with him. Kayan said that the mansion is quite big. It's easy to get lost in it. He asked her not to go alone, but rather to take a maid with her. The girl replied that it was good, and noticed that she still had so much to learn. Duke Kayan said that they are now in the main building, the very heart of the Winter Palace. There are small wings in the east and west. They are called the Snow Palace and the Dark One. The girl was surprised at such a strange name for parts of this palace. Kayan said that his parents live in the snow. Atisha suggested that Judith lives in the dark. The man replied that the dark part was empty at the moment. The Wintle's heir will reside there. Judith lives in a tower outside the castle. It's called the Star Tower. Duke Kayan said that Atisha's bedroom is on the 3rd floor of the main palace. The entire floor is hers. She can safely explore it. Atisha did not believe what she heard. Kayan said that to put it correctly, this is the Duke and Duchess's floor. They approached a huge door, and Duke Kayan said that this was her bedroom. Atisha was very surprised that there was only one entrance to the bedroom. In the capital, her room was opposite the Duke's room. Does it split further? Or do they really have one bedroom for two? The girl was afraid to find out the answer. The Duke said that since he had already shown he would retire to his office, he still needs to study the reports about what happened in the northern lands during his absence. The man wished him a good rest and left. The girl was left alone with an unanswered question that still remains to be found out. Meanwhile, Judith brought Hexion to the Star Tower where she lives. She invited him, and the Marquis asked if he could really be here. The girl looked down and said that there was no one else here. He laughed and said that it looked like Mrs. Cyrillese had raised her in a greenhouse. If she wants to be like a society lady, she shouldn't behave like that. Hexion added that she did not receive the education due to the nobles, although she uses things of the highest quality. The man wanted to touch her things, but Dith cried out that Mrs. Cyrillese had given them to her and told him not to handle them so carelessly. He looked at her dress and asked if the mistress gave it to her too. Miss Judith smiled and said, "Yes, this dress is great." Marquis Hexion replied that as expected she knew nothing. Dith screamed what he meant. The man asked if she had ever heard the story of the Imperial Canary. The girl looked questioningly. The Marquis began to tell this story. One day, the first emperor found a bird with golden plumage in the mountains. The emperor immediately fell in love with the canary and began to take care of it. He gave her a name, fed her, and took care of her like the apple of her eye. The girl asked what he was leading to. The man asked Judith not to interrupt and to listen to what would happen next. Since the emperor treasured the canary, he treated it with special care. The servants were careful and attentive, fearing that something would happen to her. The bird became more and more beautiful. But one day something terrible happened. The emperor suddenly wanted to see her soaring in the sky, and he released her from the cage. But no, she could not spread her wings and only chirped. From what? Hexion said it was because she was kept in a cage and taken good care of. Her legs weakened, and her vision deteriorated significantly. The hawk has turned into a canary that can only twitter. Judith turned and asked if he was implying that she looked like that canary. The man said that she was quick-witted. She was lucky that Mrs. Cyrillese noticed her, and because of this she turned into a bird imprisoned in a rich cage. The girl screamed that this was not true. The lady sees her as a daughter. The man asked, "Really? Was she treated differently at the banquet with her pet dog?" The girl replied that those ladies were just evil. The Marquis said that in the end their relationship with her unwittingly revealed the whole truth. He means that he is in a pitiful and ridiculous position. Dith lowered her head. She remembered all the pleasant moments associated with Mrs. Cyrillese. The girl thought about the very cage in which she is now. Perhaps the Marquis of Hexion was right in his guesses, and she is just an imperial canary. The man said that perhaps Mrs. Cirilizzi raised her out of simple curiosity, pity, or just generosity. It does not matter. What's more important is that the girl is treated like her pet. Therefore, if she wants to escape from this terrible reality, she must listen to his advice. At the same time, Duke Kayan came to his and Atisha's room and took off his jacket. The man looked at the sleeping Atisha and even felt a little moved. He took off his t-shirt and sat down next to Atisha. Kayan looked at her sleeping face and thought, Atisha was able to gain the power to crush those who hurt her. The Duke took her dress and lifted it a little so that he could see her legs. He asked her why she didn't take revenge on the Hines family. All the Duke's sufferings were born from deep darkness. A happy childhood disappeared without him even noticing. Kayan of Wintel had to come to terms with sudden misfortune. He wanted to escape from this terrible reality. He didn't want to be a part of it. Must live, and for everything to work out, he must break ties with the past. The people who brought him suffering, he must take revenge, cut off their heads. Burn their bodies, trample their ashes. He must take merciless revenge. Atisha is a girl who, like him, wants to cut off all ties with the past. But unlike him, she doesn't need revenge. The Duke was tormented by the question why. Isn't she furious? Is this fair? Doesn't she want to kill them all? Atisha felt the Duke's touch and opened her eyes. The girl did not understand what was happening. Kayan let go of her dress and did not say that everything was fine and let her go back to bed. He thought that nothing had changed. We need to have a wedding in a month, because everything will go as planned before. In the morning, Mrs. Cirilizzi and Miss Atisha had a tea party. The woman asked if her dress was torn. Atisha replied that yes, it looks like she tore it in her sleep. Mother replied that she should not worry, she would buy something else. The girl did not know when she managed to tear it. She dreamed of the Duke as usual. Mrs. Cirilizzi added that by the way it was she who handed the letter to the girl. Atisha asked what it was, and Cirilizzi replied that it was an invitation to a tea party from the Marquis of Hexion. He invited her, Atisha, and Dith. At yesterday's banquet, the Marquis of Hexion spoke with the ladies Monmad and Dith. Despite this, the Marquis of Hexion is involved in various scandalous rumors. Therefore, she worries that Dith will not get into trouble. Atisha thought that the lady really cares about her adopted daughter. She thought about how cool it would be if she had such caring parents. They would share nice things with her and worry about her if something happened. The girl was jealous. Suddenly she heard her mother-in-law's voice in her dreams. She asked what it was, and the lady said that she would accept the invitation anyway. The woman asked what about her, will she go with them? The girl thought about it. She said it was an honor, but she was not yet used to banquets held in the north. Many rumors make her worry. Atisha smiled and said that next time she will come with them. The woman was very embarrassed by her smile and asked not to smile at her like that. After tea, Atisha looked around her new home with 2 servants. She thought that, to be honest, the lady was also charming. The girl went into the library and was delighted with how huge it was. Atisha L. saw a door at the end of the hall and became interested in where it led. One of the maids said that this was the Duke's office and that he should be there now. Suddenly, these doors opened and the assistant to the Duke of Val-de-Prame came out. The man greeted Miss Atisha. He told her to come in and that the Duke was waiting for her. The girl asked again. He asked if she didn't come here because of the gift. Atisha was not embarrassed when she heard that the Duke had prepared a gift for her. When she entered the office, she saw a lot of magnificent jewelry. The girl forced me when I saw one set of them. Kayan asked if she liked it. Atisha replied that she did not need all this expensive jewelry. Kayan said it was as an apology and added not to be burdened. The girl asked what kind of apology we were talking about. He has nothing to apologize for. The Duke replied that the dress was torn. Atisha blushed and said it was her fault. But suddenly the man says that he broke it. The girl froze, not believing what she heard. She looked at him in surprise, and Kayan replied that last night he tore her dress. The Baroness was so shocked by what she heard that she did not notice that she had missed the necklace. Miss Atisha turned red and covered her mouth with her hands in shame. The maids who heard this and Val-de-Prame's assistant were in a stupor. They imagined Duke Kayan tearing Miss Atisha's dress in a fit of passion. The girl still could not believe that her dress was torn by the Duke. The man himself, unlike the others, showed no emotion. Atisha recalled what happened at night. She lay on the Duke's hand and he touched her with his other hand. A moment later, the girl was already lying in the arms of the Duke. She thought she dreamed it. Kayan once again asked for forgiveness and said that it was his fault he miscalculated the force. Atisha replied that everything is fine and this can happen to anyone. The man said that he invited the designer. I couldn't help but keep my word. He wants to make amends with these gifts. The Duke asked to receive them. Atisha said to control herself because people are looking at her now. They might become suspicious if she continues to pull away from him. Duke Cayenne shows everyone their close relationship. The girl didn't know if it was true about the torn dress. Atisha took the first jewelry box she liked and opened it. The girl was very surprised because the heart of an angel lay inside her. A wonderful necklace, a decoration that was found only in fairy tales that she read as a child. One day, a half-pink diamond came from heaven. After this news, the crown prince made 7 ornaments out of it. He gave each of them to his bride throughout the week. She burst into tears of happiness after receiving such gifts filled with the love of the crown prince. Then they got married, and they lived happily ever after. Atisha could not believe that such an extraordinary jewel was now in her hands. The Duke said that she seemed to know what it was. This necklace is made from an angel's heart, the very first of 7. The girl said that this necklace was too expensive for her. The man asked what she was talking about. This is bullshit, it's just a rock anyway. Atisha thought that this was a very expensive stone. The Duke chose it because he thought it would suit Atisha. The man took out a necklace and asked Lady Atisha to hold her hair. The girl put her hair away, and the Duke put such beauty on her and buttoned it up. Cayenne looked and said that as expected it suits her very well. In her thoughts, Atisha was happy because she had a new trinket from the Duke on her neck and a necklace from the Emperor under her dress. The man asked if she wanted to look at other gifts. The girl replied that it was not worth it. The Duke still has so much to do, she doesn't dare detain him any longer. Atisha touched her new jewelry and said that she would take care of it. Cayenne replied that it was good and added that he would send the rest to her dressing room. The girl thanked him and wished him a good day. She left the office. The maids could not believe that the Duke gave Miss Atisha the heart of an angel. He even smiled a little. And last night he tore her dress. Is this the same Duke they knew before? Baroness Atisha L. suddenly became the fiancée of Duke Wintel, and the most interesting topic of conversation in society. The maids discussed among themselves that the Duke tore her dress and said how ardent he was. Rumors spread quickly, and about the fact that the Duke gave her the heart of an angel, and about the fact that Lady Cyrillise invited her to a tea party. One day left until tea party. Other people wait years for an invitation to Lady Cyrillise's tea party. One of the maids asked why everyone was so surprised. She lied that she knew that Lady Atisha was a famous person in the capital land estate gifts from the Emperor. She asked if they now understand that Atisha L. is different from others. This is how the importance of Atisha became more and more every day, of course without her knowledge. In the evening in the Star Tower, Judith learned about these rumors. The girl bit her nails and thought, did Cayenne really tear her dress? She considered it impossible. This simply cannot be. Dith was furious. She pulled out a chair and sat down on it. The girl began to write a letter to the Marquis of Hexion, who promised to help her. A couple of days later, Hexion thanked them for accepting his invitation, as he knows they are all very busy. He told the girls that he hoped they had a great time and had fun. Mrs. Monmad calmly drank tea and looked at Judith. She couldn't understand what Marquis Hexion was thinking when he invited a commoner here. If it weren't for Lady Cyrillise, she would have thrown her out of here long ago. The man watched Judith's behavior in society and came to the conclusion that she was different from others. The conversation took place a couple of days ago. Then the Marquis of Hexion told the girl, "A month, she only has 1 month." Miss Judith didn't understand and asked what he meant. The Marquis smiled in response. He asked if he understood correctly that their wedding would take place in a month. In the eyes of the aristocrats, Dith is now the daughter of a duchess and the mistress of a duke. But what will happen if the official owner of the Wintel family appears? Everyone will forget about her. If those two get married, it will be the end for her. The girl clenched her fist tightly and asked what she needed to do. Hexion replied that she had a month. During this month, she needs to strengthen her position. Judith must not allow any of the Wintels or aristocrats to treat her inappropriately. The Marquis added that for this, she needs allies, and that's all for today. Finally, Hexion advised her to start with Countess Monmad. It was at the tea party that Judith decided to act. She got up from the table and wanted to say something to Mrs. Cyrillise. But unexpectedly, the girl, as if by accident, threw over a cup of hot tea. All this tea, of course, doused Countess Monmad. The woman was furious. Hot tea flowed down the fabrics of the expensive outfit. Judith began to ask for forgiveness and say that it was an accident. The Countess asked how this could be an accident, Everyone saw that it was on purpose. The woman came closer and said that even if it was a mistake, she had doused the countess and should be punished. The girl once again asked for forgiveness and said that she really didn't mean to. She took a napkin and asked to let her help wipe, but Monmad hit her on the hand and told her not to touch it. "Who is she to touch her with your dirty hands?" The other invited ladies did not want to interfere in their quarrel. Suddenly Mrs. Sirolesi told the countess that she was too rude. The woman wiped her mouth with a napkin and said that she had not brought a dirty child with her. There was silence in the hall, but then Monmad screamed that Judith had deliberately spilled tea on her. It's obvious that she held a grudge against her after the banquet, Sirolesi began to remember. The woman said that at the banquet one arrogant lady slapped Dith in the face, her adopted daughter. But the banquet she held where Judith was first introduced to society, Sirolesi said that this was interesting and asked Madame Monmad if she happened to know this reckless lady. Monmad bit her lip. She said that she did not know what happened at the banquet, but let the Duchess let go of her anger, and the troubles of that day would settle down by themselves. Mrs. Sirolesi said that this is great advice and she thinks so too. The woman stood up and said that of course the noble Madame Monmad was so well versed in decency and laws, and she will be lenient towards the mistakes of her child who still knows little. Monmad replied that of course. Later she walked along the corridor and thought that this toadstool had enlisted the support of Madame Sirolesi. The Marquis of Hexion approached her and said that this dress suited her very well. He apologizes to her on his behalf for today's incident. After all, the law of nobility says, do not neglect injustice, but he cannot oppose it due to certain circumstances. He has no reason to meet with the countess. The girl blushed and said that he shouldn't apologize for that. She hopes he will be more considerate in the future. She doesn't want to see commoners here. Hexion said this was unexpected. He thought that she would need this child more than anyone else. Countess Monmad asked what he meant. The man replied that with the wedding of Duke Cayenne, a new duchess would appear in the world. Madame Sirolesi will soon leave high society, but Baroness Atisha L., whose name used to be Atisha Heinz. The woman interrupted and said that she had heard about her and that it seemed that Atisha L. was quite a shameless girl. Hexion asked if she would be worthy to become the top of secular society. Monmad asked if this meant that she should sit on this throne. The man replied that he thought she was more worthy of it. If not she, then who can become Madame Sirolesi's successor? He then asked her to use Judith, whom she considers a commoner. Judith is a means that can shake the greatness of Duke Wintel, who stands as strong as a mountain. Hexion said she just had to take advantage of this opportunity. At night at the castle, Atisha L. decided to walk around it in her nightie. She walked and thought whether Cayenne would sleep with her today like yesterday. The girl was wondering why he tore her dress. If you remember the past, he is sometimes very harsh. She wondered if he really had such preferences, and then dismissed the thought. She asked the Duke for forgiveness for such vulgar thoughts. Suddenly, Atisha looked at the wall. The girl realized that these were all portraits of Wintel's. She began to look at them. Atisha reached the very end and finally saw the portrait of Duke Cayenne. The girl said he was cute and saw that his birth date was there. 1 year of Barris 5 of the gods, 7th star. Atisha was horrified that it was tomorrow. Suddenly behind her, she heard the Duke's voice. He asked her what she was doing here. The girl didn't know what to do. She can't say that she doesn't know about his birthday. Atisha L. said that she was just walking around and looking at the portraits and got a little lost. The Baroness looked at the wall and noticed something strange. One of the portraits was missing. The girl began to think why it was empty, as if someone had been removed. When she looks at them shoulder to shoulder, it becomes uncomfortable. Duke Cayenne asked where her maids were. The girl hesitated. She said she was only going out for a minute, so she didn't take them with her. The man said that she was very pale and asked her to go back to the room and rest. He would call the doctor. The girl replied that she did not need a doctor. Cayenne asked if something was bothering her. She blushed and said that, to be honest, she wanted to apologize. She didn't know that tomorrow was his birthday and would probably be holding a reception. The Duke replied that they were not holding celebrations for his birthday. Atisha was very surprised by this. The man said that since childhood he was not used to celebrating it, and this year everything will be the same. The girl asked why this is a special day of the year. The Duke thought for a moment. He replied that it was because he did not want to waste his time on such complex things. Atisha didn't understand a little about these complicated things. Larian went out of her way every year to host a lavish celebration. Not like the Duke. She asked if it would be possible that everything would be fine if it turned out to be not so difficult. The man did not understand what she meant. The girl replied that now she knows that tomorrow is his birthday, and she does not want this day to be ordinary. She received a lot of help from him, and he gave her so many things. Therefore, she wants to pay him with the slightest help and help with the organization. The girl added that she was not talking about the ball. She just hopes the Duke will spend some time with her. He came closer and asked if his birthday was so important to her. Etisha replied that of course because next year she will not be with him. The girl thought that this was really so burdensome for him. She doesn't have much time left. Therefore only now can she celebrate his birthday. The guy replied that he agreed. She asked to spend time with him. Etisha L was very happy and thanked the Duke sincerely. The next day Etisha was riding in a carriage through the city. She looked at the streets from the window. The girl said that the houses look very neat even from afar, and the roads are in good condition. Headmaid Korda told her that it was because Duke Kayan ordered regular maintenance and inspection every year. Subsidies are provided to the elderly, or in case of disasters. During heavy snowfalls, the snow is removed in a timely manner before it melts and turns into ice. Etisha thought that the climate in the north is harsher, and the Duke copes well. As expected, he is wonderful. The maid asked Etisha why she decided to take a walk. The girl became embarrassed and said that she needed to buy something. The maids wondered what she was talking about. Etisha didn't know what gift the Duke would like. The girl is a little confused because it seems like he already has everything. Suddenly the carriage stopped abruptly. The Baroness asked what was going on. The main maid, Korda, said that she would come out and see what happened. On the street, the guards shouted to the stranger, how dare he block the path of Wintel's carriage. Hexion thought that others might think he was a murderer. The man suddenly said that he just wanted to say hello. Etisha began to remember this man. She shouted to the guards to stop and she got out of her carriage. Etisha asked Korda if this was true, but immediately received the answer that she was right. This is the Marquis of Hexion. Etisha did not understand what to do with the Marquis on the street without an escort. The girl approached him and bowed, saying that she was glad to meet him. She introduced herself, and in response she heard that he knew who she was. The man said that only 3 people were allowed to ride on the carriage with the Wintel's family crest. Duke Kayen, Madame Cyrillès, and Baroness Etisha L. Hexion showed her 3 fingers. He added that if the probability is 1 in 3, then it is worth throwing yourself under it. Etisha asked what he meant. The man replied that he was just bored. He came closer to her, leaned over, and asked if she didn't remember him. Etisha didn't understand what was wrong with this man. He wasn't even sure that it would be her in the carriage. But he still blocked the road. If he had not been careful, he could have been trampled by a horse. The girl did not understand what his words meant. Is he talking about the tea ceremony? Etisha asked if he was talking about the last tea ceremony. She apologized for not accepting his invitation that day. She is not yet familiar with the north. The man stood gloomy, and the girl thought that something was wrong with the atmosphere. Did she really say something wrong? Hexion couldn't find the right words, but at the end he said that it was sad that she didn't remember him. Etisha was surprised and asked if he could be confusing her with someone else. The man put his hood back on and said he thought he had made a mistake. The girl thought that the tone of his voice had strangely become much sharper. He's probably angry. Heinz apologized for suddenly jumping in front of her carriage. He added that someone was waiting for him so he should go already. He once again asked for forgiveness and left. Korda asked Lady Etisha if she knew Marquis Hexion. The girl replied that no, this was her first meeting with him. The main maid said it was strange Etisha didn't understand. Did she really know Marquis Hexion before? But if she met someone who was so outstanding, she would hardly forget about it. At the same time, someone sent Judith a box with a very beautiful dress. The girl tried it on and it looked gorgeous on her. She couldn't believe it was for her. Miss noticed a note on this box. The girl hoped that this gift did not come to her by mistake. She read the note, and this gift turned out to be from Mrs. Monmad. No matter how many times she read it, she still couldn't believe it. At the last tea ceremony, she said that she wanted to be friends with her. Dith has never received gifts like this. Does this mean that Madame Monmad treats her like the Duke's lady? The girl squeezed her dress and thought that she was very happy. The lady always gives her flowing and simple dresses. But when she wears this dress, she looks like the main character of a fashion party. She wondered what Kayan would say when he saw her in this outfit. Will he look at her differently if he sees her so beautiful? She must go and see Duke Kayan as quickly as possible. The table had already been set in honor of the Duke's birthday. Etisha was already sitting and waiting for him. She wondered whether the Duke would like her gift. If you like it, she will be very happy. Cayenne of Wintel came to the hall. The girl began to get up, but the Duke asked not to do this. She greeted him. The man said that he heard that someone came to her. He asked if she had any problems. The girl replied that it didn't matter. It's just a small incident. Atisha took out her gift and asked the Duke to accept it. Cayenne didn't understand what it was. She said it was her gift to him. Since it is a plant, he can continue to grow it. She chose him because the Duke would be able to admire him for a long time. Duke Cayenne didn't even know how to react to this. He touched the blue ball in the middle of the flower. Suddenly, a small copy of Atisha appeared from him and wished him a happy birthday. She hoped that this year would also be happy for him and thanked him for everything. Cayenne was very surprised by this gift. He thought that Atisha still wanted to celebrate his birthday. Even after she dies, Atisha will die in 1 year. She will no longer be there. 1 year later, she will no longer be able to be here. She will get sick and die. Duke Cayenne did not understand why his heart sank from this realization. The girl said that she was wondering if he liked her gift. Suddenly, Atisha L felt a piercing pain. She fell to her knees in front of the Duke. Cayenne didn't understand for a second what was happening. He rushed towards her, grabbing her, but she fell straight into his lap. Cayenne screamed at her to stay conscious with him. Her gift, which she spent so long choosing and choosing, was broken. Cayenne of Wintel constantly asked Atisha if she was okay, but all he heard in response was a grunt. The man thought that this was all bad and decided to quickly call a doctor. Miss touched him with her hand and said that there was no need for that, she was fine. The girl said that this was just the second symptom and she would soon be fine. She proved that she was telling the truth and that she was better. Cayenne was a little confused. He asked if she was really okay. The girl replied yes and thanked him. Atisha apologized very much because of her, the gift for him was broken. The man replied that everything was fine. The stone that showed the image and the water lily were intact. They just need a new tank. Atisha noticed that he was all wet, and if he stayed like that, he would definitely get sick. She took a napkin from the table and asked to wait a minute. The girl began to wipe him off. Atisha suggested using a tissue to remove the moisture first. She added that she was glad he was okay. The Duke was embarrassed by the situation he was in now. Judith accidentally saw this whole picture of intimacy when she entered the room. The girl again saw the ring on Atisha's finger and froze for a second. Pora noticed her, but they still continued to stand in silence, not knowing what to say. Atisha was thinking about what she should do now. What if Dith saw her symptoms of extreme mana? The man took Atisha by the waist and hugged her. He asked Dith what was going on. Judith was unable to answer. She continued to stand rooted to the spot. The girl smiled and said that she came to show him her outfit, because this is the first time in recent times that she has worn such a fashionable dress. Dith said that this was a gift from Madame Manhwa to her, so she wants to show it to Cayenne too. The girl walked and did not notice how she stepped on the same stone. A small copy of Atisha appeared from it again and began to congratulate the Duke. She said again that she hoped that next year would be as happy as this one, and thanked him. Atisha looked at Judith worriedly, and so the man asked if everything was okay. Dith was furious. Birthday? Is she really celebrating Cayenne's birthday? This is simply impossible. Cayenne always forgot about celebrating his birthday. He never had any holidays or other gifts. Judith told herself not to be upset and that no one can have Cayenne. The girl gritted her teeth and thought about how she didn't like all of this. She could barely hold back her tears, so she decided not to run away from this room. Atisha L shouted to wait for her, but as soon as she wanted to follow her, the Duke grabbed her hand. The girl did not understand what this meant, and only looked after her in alarm. At night, Judith ran through the castle and thought that she knew that Cayenne was better than Atisha. She thinks about Cayenne a lot more than she does Lady Cayenne's must be her. It is she who should receive care from Mrs. Cyriles, receive gifts from Cayenne. Be delightful to servants and maids. Atisha, this is not the same woman. She should have it all. The girl lay crying into her pillow. She thought about becoming a Cayenne's woman. A tear fell on her palm, and she realized that she must take Atisha's place. Marquis Hexion entered the room, and calling her a canary, sighed. He leaned over to her, began to stroke her, and tenderly asked why she was crying. Judith didn't quite understand what he was doing here. The girl asked him what she should do. She took his hand in hers and added that she would do anything to take her place. The man smiled and took her face. He told her that he congratulated the canary. She left the cage. Before going to bed, Cayenne asked Atisha if she had any breathing problems. The girl replied that she was already better and thanked the Duke for worrying. He asked if it was because she was pushing herself hard when she came out. The girl replied no Corda, and the night helped her a lot, so she quickly returned. Atisha said that during the day she accidentally came across Marquis Hexion. Suddenly he jumped right in front of the carriage. There was almost an accident. He seemed to know her, but this was Atisha's first meeting with him. The girl said she thought he was mistaking her for someone else. The Duke thought for a moment but then replied that he should have told her something earlier but missed the chance. Among the world's leading aristocrats, there are two people Lady Atisha must be wary of. The first is Madame Monmad. It would not be an exaggeration to say that all the gossip and scandals in the north come from her. The man told her not to get too entangled. When talking to her, you need to be careful with what you say. And the other person is the Marquis of Hexion. Kayan asked not to pay attention to his interest in her. Atisha thought about his words. The Duke told her that the Marquis was a dangerous man. He loves to play with women. The life of any woman who is associated with him will be ruined. Atisha replied that this would never happen. The girl added that she understood and would take this into account. The Duke said it was good. He asked her to go to bed already. She must rest. Atisha asked when he would go to bed. Kayan replied that she shouldn't worry about him, and when he goes to bed. The girl closed her eyes and thought about what she was going to ask if Dith was okay. The Duke looked at her sleepy and raised his hand to stroke her. But suddenly the man realized what he was not doing and immediately removed his hand. A few days later, Atisha was drinking tea and thinking about what had happened. She was concerned that Dith happened to see her symptoms of excessive Mani illness that day, but nothing happened in these couple of days. The girl was glad that she did not come across Judith. Everything has become too complicated. Suddenly, Mrs. Cyriles called her daughter-in-law and asked if she was here. The girl shouted that she was here. She gave her a piece of paper and told her that it was the list of guests to whom the wedding invitations would be sent. Atisha looked at him and thought that all the people here are wonderful. The list included the imperial family royals, nobles, archmages, and high priests. Cyriles told her that if she wants to invite someone or remove someone from the list, let her tell her now. Atisha replied that everything was fine. Her wedding is also the wedding of the Wintels family. The family guests that Mom invited are also her guests. Mrs. Cyriles admired her and said that her daughter-in-law's words were beautiful and that she was very thoughtful. Atisha replied that she was very kind to her and they praised her too much. The lady became embarrassed and said that she would leave the final guest list that way. The girl thought that Cyriles really was the nicest person in the empire. Cyriles took out another invitation and said that she made it just in case. The girl opened it and was very surprised Cyriles doesn't know whether she needs him or not. But her daughter-in-law's opinion is more important than anything else. Atisha couldn't believe that this was an invitation to the Heinz family. It says that the invitation is for Sister Larienne Viscount Heinz and Lady Dorothea. Will they all come north? The girl put the envelope back on the table. The lady replied that it looked like an invitation was not needed. She apologized and said that she should have asked her. Atisha replied that she knew and was grateful that she asked her. Cyriles called the maid to her and told her to throw away this letter. And then, after thinking a little, she told her to tear it up and burn it. Then melt the remaining ashes in water and make ice from it. Then cut this ice with an axe. The maid replied that she would do it right away. She turned to Atisha and asked her if it was necessary to pour oil on the broken ice and set it on fire again. The girl responded by asking if she could receive this invitation if everything was in order. Cyriles thought she had gone too far. Atisha replied that she wanted to break it herself. At the residence of the Marquis Hexions, a man asked the canary if it was ready. The girl came out to him in a beautiful red dress and a mask on her face. She asked him if she had to wear this dress because she wanted to choose other clothes. The Marquis replied that last time she was happy because the dress was gorgeous and asked if that was true. Judith replied that she hates him now. The man replied that she could not do this now. This is a great opportunity for her to appear in a gift from Madame Monmad's. People without power like her must use whatever is available to them. She needs to be patient. If everything goes well, she will be able to purchase dresses like this one. Dith replied that she understood. She thought that the Marquis was right. From now on, she will climb up with her own feet. The girl entered the main hall. Men and women immediately noticed her. Judith decided for himself that from today, she is Mrs. Kyans. She came to this holiday as his courtesan. At the ball, the guests danced and had fun. Men invited ladies to dance. Others gossiped over a glass of champagne, but their peace was disturbed by a girl who had just entered the hall. The stranger with the mask was dressed smartly, and immediately all eyes were on her. Judith thought everything was going well. She must play with confidence. And all that remains for her is to wait until her mother tells her the way. Suddenly, the waiter who was carrying glasses collided with Judith. Glasses of freshly poured champagne fell to the floor. The waiter apologized and asked if she was okay. Judith took off her mask, smiled, and said she was fine. The guests couldn't believe that it was Judith under the mask. How can a commoner come to this party? Did Marquis Hexion let someone into a party without confirming his identity? The invitees thought that the commoner was at the ball because someone took her with him. Maybe Duke Cayenne took her with him as his mistress? If so, then this woman must be Duke Cayenne's mistress. Val de Prame told the Duke that he seemed to have found it. Indeed, he is still alive. Duke Cayenne replied that of course he is not one who dies easily. It seemed to the assistant that someone was helping him every time he missed it. He thinks there might be an insider. Cayenne of Wintle replied that he knew this. The assistant asked again. The Duke said it was true, but they have nothing to worry about, so Val de Prame better continue to keep an eye on him. This time he needs to watch more strictly and not get caught again. Val de Prame replied that he would do so and left Cayenne's office. The man stopped in the corridor and thought about what the Duke was counting on in his head. This is completely incomprehensible to him. These days he only values the vase that Lady Atisha gave him. The atmosphere is also different from yours before. Suddenly his assistant realized. The Duke pressed the blue ball. Once again Atisha wished him a happy birthday and wished him a good year. Val de Prame couldn't believe that this was possible. He thought that if the Duke was really like that, then he would change his dog. The next day, Judith hummed a cheerful tune and looked at the huge mountain of gifts. She thought that, as expected, Marquis Hexion was right. Everyone at the party thinks that she is Cayenne's lover, so they sent her these gifts. If she wears this in front of others, will it mean that she is Cayenne's lover? Someone knocked on the door and asked if she was there. It was Mrs. Cyrillise. The girl was a little scared because she wasn't expecting her. She didn't know what to do with all these gifts on the table. Cyrillise said that she had something to say, and she came for a minute. Judith began to hide the gifts and asked to wait a second. Suddenly the doors opened. The girl thought that if Madame Cyrillise saw this, Judith sat down and, having overcome herself, looked at her mother. Madame seemed to be furious. The woman said that she had heard that she and Marquis Hexion had a pretty good relationship. She asked the girl if it was true that she called him to her tower and also went out with him. Dith was silent. The Marquis told her that he avoided all the guards, so how did she find out? Mrs. Cyrillise took her daughter's hands in hers and said that she understood her. She's old enough to be married, it's time to look for a man. Cyrillise cannot pay attention to them due to Cayenne's marriage. The woman said that Dith's problem is due to her ignorance, but she hopes that she will have a happy marriage with a rich and wonderful man, not a noble's concubine. She will provide any support, and they will agree for any man she wants. Judith didn't expect Miss Cyrillise to say something like that. She thought that she would be scolded. But the woman, on the contrary, cares about her very much. Mom wants her to be happy. Perhaps she will allow her to be with Cayenne. The girl said that she wanted to tell her something. Madam, she's listening carefully. Judith said that she actually loves Cayenne. The girl confessed that she would like to become Cayenne's concubine. Then she will not be separated from her mistress and will live happily in the castle for a long time. Cyrillise suddenly stood up and hit the girl in the face. Judith screamed. The woman could not realize that she had done this. She said it was impossible. The two of them never. The two of them can't be like that. The woman turned the table over, took Judith, and began to shake her. Dith begged to be released and let her go, to which Madame shouted at her to swear that she would not look at Cayenne as a man again. Judith just cried and couldn't say anything more, so the mistress shouted at her to hurry up. Suddenly, Mrs. Cyrillise realized what she was doing and let the girl go. She fell to the floor and hit herself painfully. Madame's eyes showed that she was sorry. The woman leaned over, apologized, and tried to touch Judith, but she moved away from her. The girl turned away and said that she wanted to be alone now. Cyrillise understood that it was better for her to leave her alone and therefore decided to leave. Finally, she told her that she would send a doctor here to look at her, and if she had any injuries, then let her know. The action takes place on a bright spring day. The day of the spring festival in the Ignobins Empire was started and people began to celebrate it. Atisha asked again. The Duke said that Madame Monmad sent her an invitation to the spring festival. The girl was surprised that in the north, even without spring, there is still a spring festival. She asked if they would catch a cold because the event was held outdoors. Kayan told her that although it was called the Spring Festival, it was an indoor party. Madame Monmad only creates a holiday mood. He asked if she wanted to take part. Etisha L thought she's been up north for a while, so now it must be a good idea to attend events like this. She replied that if the Duke would join, she would be glad to go. The man replied that she should think she was going. The lady asked if everything was fine. Maybe he's busy and she's wasting his time. The Duke replied, no, before marriage he will accompany Lady Etisha to some places. He thought that of course he didn't have time to attend parties like this right now, but if it was only for a while. Etisha thanked him for agreeing. She said that in this case, she could try wearing the things that the Duke gave her. Kayan thought that he was indeed very busy, but he could adjust his schedule. After all, when Etisha dies, even if there are private parties, he will never go to them again. Etisha talked about what dress she should wear. All the dresses that the Duke gave her are very beautiful. He asked what she was saying. Since this party is for the Spring Festival, she must wear a new matching dress. The lady replied that there were still many dresses in her closet that she had not worn. Kayan said that then he will throw a party where she can wear those dresses. This is normal for the Etisha lady. The man added that it would be good to organize a festival on the Wintle territory. She can wear a matching dress on different days, or choose a party theme for the entire week. Etisha laughed. She tried to refuse the gift of the dress, but it looks like she received another gift, a party. At the Spring Festival itself, guests were already gradually gathering. Madame Monmad asked Judith if she remembered the text. The girl replied that she remembered everything without mistakes. Madame said that again, the Spring Festival is the opening song of spring, and the person who sings this song is the main character of the festival. Judith asked her for you. She rehearsed for several nights to memorize it. The girl was sure. Monmad thought that Baroness Etisha is attending a party today. Duke Kayan said he would accompany her, but this was probably just a formality. The Duke is always known for not appearing at such events. She decided to show them all today. The label of the main wife being worse than a concubine would stay with her for the rest of her life. She should make Judith a useful tool. The woman took her scarf and covered the girl's shoulders. Madame said her shoulders were too exposed. These clothes affect her dignity, so it is better to refrain from their relationship. Didn't Madame Cyriles tell her about this? Dith looked down and apologized. Monmad noticed that her expression changes when she remembers Madame Cyriles. Should she try to persuade her to tell? The woman replied that everything was fine. Madame Cyriles is known for her cruelty. Anyone who stays near her will definitely get hurt. She didn't do anything wrong. When Mrs. Cyriles gives her trouble, she can turn to her. Judith wiped a tear from her cheek. The girl said that she thought that the mistress was taking care of her, but it turns out that this was not the case. She asked Monmad what she should do. Because she cries, her throat becomes dry. Madame suggested pretending that she didn't know this, and leaving it for today. But if there is something to tell about Cyriles, then let her find it and add that this scarf is a gift. She suggested that she listen to a great song today. She will be waiting. Judith told Monmad in her thoughts that she was truly a good person. Madame was going down the stairs, and she was wondering who came there. But suddenly she twisted her face because she saw Miss Etisha with Duke Kayan. The Duke, who is almost invisible at parties, appears as a partner. Moreover, is this necklace the heart of an angel? Monmad thought this was actually good. Today the girl will lose her face right in front of Duke Kayan. Madame Monmad thanked everyone for coming to her party today. She asked if it was true that to start the spring festival, of course, there should be a song to open the spring. The woman waved her fan and asked Judith for permission to introduce her. She introduced Judith as the person who would sing the song to usher in spring. Etisha was very surprised to see Dith in front of her. The guests began to whisper about them. They said that seeing Madame Monmad in such a state, they are convinced that Judith is really the beloved of Duke Kayan's. This must be true. Monmad continued to say that before the song begins, the Spring Festival is still an unfamiliar event for them Northerners. She said that Miss Dith, who will perform the song, is also a Northerner. This song about the opening of spring may mean too much to her. If only someone could help Miss Judith. Suddenly she looked at Baroness Etisha and asked if she wanted to sing with Dith. The guests began to beg her to sing. They wanted to hear the opening song of spring from the capital. Monmad grinned. The first wife and mistress stand back to back as they sing. Everyone will compare the two of them. Moreover, from what she had heard, Baroness Etisha in the capital was terribly deaf. It will be really embarrassing right now. The Duke asked Madame Monmad what she was doing. He can't believe she's making such a rude request after inviting a guest. The Countess replied that it could be very wonderful and that what he said was a bit of an exaggeration. She just wants to leave the Baroness the honor of singing the song that opens spring. Kayan asked if she was really talking about honor now. He asked her to explain then what the goal was. She puts Dith a commoner in this glorious place? Monmad said she received an anonymous recommendation. They said that her singing skills were as good as the canaries. The man said that she intended to take advantage of Dith's, who knows nothing, in order to slander Miss Atisha. The same goes for those who support the Countess. Duke said that from start to finish, he suspects their intention behind this situation. Atisha L took his hand and said that she thought everything would be fine if she sang. He began to warn her that this situation was strange, but the Baroness replied that she did not want the festive atmosphere to be ruined because of her. The girl touched the pendant and added that she also wanted to sing. Cayenne of Wintel replied that if everything is good for her, then let her go. Atisha approached the Countess and asked if she could sing there now. The woman was at a loss. Atisha replied that she meant the song that opens spring. This opportunity rarely comes around, so she wants to sing. She asked if she would sing with Dith. Does she want to sing the first verse? If she picks up the tempo, she can sing along. Judith replied that she would sing the first verse then. The two girls stood together preparing to perform. Dith thought that she should show everyone that the person who is suitable for Cayenne is her, not Atisha. Judith started singing the first verse. Her voice was beautiful, so the guests enjoyed her singing. Monmad thought that although her plan was a little different, she seemed to be successful in the end. Atisha will soon be embarrassed in front of all these people, the girl began to sing. Unexpectedly for Madame Monmad, the Baroness had a beautiful voice which the guests had already appreciated. She thought it was all nonsense. She clearly heard that the Baroness was deaf. Judith also didn't understand how Atisha could have such a voice. The girl remembered that she used to love to sing, but she couldn't boast because her sister Larienne was deaf. This all remained a dream. When she finished, she heard applause. People shouted that they admired her. They couldn't believe that she had been hiding this talent all along. In the evening, she and the Duke were going to return home in a carriage. Atisha thanked him for agreeing to return. He replied that he himself needed to return to the castle and asked if she was tired. The girl replied that no, and added that she wanted to sing more. Atisha wants to sing from her heart in an open place like a castle without any interruptions. The Duke knocked on the window to make the carriage move and told the girl that he would take her to a place where she could sing her heart out. After some time they were still driving. They drove through a snowy forest. Finally they arrived. The Duke opened the door and got out of the carriage first. Atisha also followed him. The man gave her his hand and invited her to go together. The girl froze. She saw what beauty was waiting for her on the other side of the road. Atisha asked Cayenne what this place was, and he replied that he lived here when he was little. He reminded her that she had said that she wanted to sing freely without interference. There is no one in this place. The Baroness smiled, looked at the Duke, and realized that this was his secret place. The man said that he would always help her and invited her to enter. When they entered, the girl was delighted at the same time by the simplicity and luxury of this place. She kept repeating how beautiful it was here. Duke said she knew it was quite small. He added that if she was uncomfortable here, she could return back to Wintel Castle. Atisha L objected and said that she really liked this place. She was just surprised for a while and therefore didn't know what to say. Although she doesn't know whether it's strange for him to hear this or not, but for some reason she feels very comfortable and cozy in this place. The girl began to open the window. When she opened it and looked at the view from it, she finally said that she really liked it. Duke, I said that when he was young he often trained with a sword alone in the forest. When she mentioned a place without any obstacles, this house was the first thing that came to his mind. This is a place that he even forgot about for a while. But when he listened to her sing today, he suddenly remembered. The girl was embarrassed because he said that he remembered the place precisely because he listened to her sing. The Duke continued that fortunately she liked it here. She can come and use the house at any time. The girl thought that now it was like an abandoned house, and she really wanted to sing in it. She began to sing, her voice began to spread throughout the house. Atisha was a little embarrassed and couldn't be happier that she could sing again. Cayenne of Wintel listened to her attentively. At the same time at the Heinz estate, Larienne became hysterical. She broke the cup and screamed. She told her to believe in her, she knows how to do it herself. Then why can't she still see Atisha? Madame Dorothea was taken aback by her daughter's quick change of mood and sudden question. Larienne fell to the floor, grabbed her head, and just screamed Atisha's name. A beloved and sweet doll that lives and exists for itself. A doll that will never get boring. Atisha has been in the north for 2 weeks, but she still cannot contact her. Mom asked Larry first of all to just calm down and talk calmly. She wanted to touch her daughter, but she hit her on the hand. The girl shouted that Tisha was only her and should be on her side. Mom thought that after she consoled her for a while, she would be fine. This was a big problem for her. The situation is becoming increasingly unregulated. Larian said that today in the upper class, everyone is excited because they received an invitation from the Duke of Wintel. She added that it was true that she needed to come too. Come to Tisha's wedding. Dorothea started to stop her, but her daughter replied that it was all in vain. If she locks her in the room again this time, she will bite her tongue and commit suicide. Madame screamed about what it was saying. Does she really want her mother's heart to break? Larian opened the door and left the hall with her mother screaming behind her. In her room, she thought about how she could get to the north to meet Tisha. Then she will take her back to the Heinz estate, but what if everything fails? If so, then she too will leave her family and live in the north with Tisha. The next day, the maid was brushing Atisha's hair and said that it looked like the Duke had left early today. She added that the wedding was close and it would be nice if he spent more time with her. Atisha said not to say that because the Duke went to a party with her yesterday and took her to his house. Marin said that she still wishes that the Duke would care about her more than this. This is the north, she had to leave the capital and come here. The only person she can rely on is the Duke. The girl wanted to add something else, but unexpectedly Atisha snatched the comb from her hands. She herself stood up and sat the maid on a chair. Marin didn't understand what was happening. The Baroness thanked her, but added that what she said was wrong. The Duke is not the only person she can rely on. She also has it. The maid couldn't believe it. The girl added that Marin means a lot to her. Also, she has Marin's mother. She also takes good care of her, and she has it herself. As it turned out, she became a great support for herself. Until now, Atisha has always wanted to understand the Duke to learn more about him. But as it turned out, she didn't know that first she had to understand herself. Someone knocked on the door, and Corda behind the door said that it was her, the head maid. Atisha asked what was the matter, and the maid came in. The woman said that they need to go to the snow castle because the great lady is waiting for her. When they approached the snow castle, Atisha was shocked by its size. She was delighted at the thought that the former Duke and Duchess of Wintels lived here. When they entered, the girl thought that it was just as beautiful inside. It has an old-fashioned charm. Corda said that they should come here and opened the doors. Mrs. Cyrilese was waiting for her in the hall. The woman greeted her daughter-in-law and asked her to come over. Atisha L. walked up to her and looked in the direction in which her mother-in-law was looking. In the closet behind glass stood 2 mannequins dressed in the Duke and Duchess's wedding clothes. Cyrilese said that the wedding is only 2 weeks away. Now that the preparation is complete, she should try it on. The maids took her by the arms and took her to another room to change her clothes. When Atisha came out in her outfit, no one could remain indifferent. She looked great. The lady asked Corda if it was really nice to finish the preparation quickly. The maid replied that it was true. The dress looks like it was made by Atisha. Cyrilese approached the girl and said that she was glad to see the Wintel family heirloom, shining so brightly, which has been passed down through many generations. Atisha thought about this and asked herself if she could wear such a precious dress. She told the lady that if this is a family item, then she is sure that every Duchess of Wintels wore this wedding dress at her wedding. Miss Cyrilese said there was an exception, and it was her. She didn't wear this wedding dress to her wedding. Her husband didn't wear an outfit either. The woman said something like that happened. Nobody knows what will happen next. She told her that Atisha should not worry about such small things either. The girl turned and looked in the mirror, thinking about what her mother-in-law had said. Was she really screwing herself up? She doesn't need to take this matter seriously. The girl thought that this was right. It's better to think to yourself for now. For example, like when she sang, really she needs to think about this. She looked at the suit and wondered when she could meet the Duke's father. Meanwhile, Larian Hines was running through the deserted streets of the city. She had only one thought in her head, that in the end she would meet Atisha. Unexpectedly, she collided with some guy and hit her very hard. She shouted at him that he was crazy. How could he hurt a noble woman's precious body? The girl added that let him open his eyes when he walks and ran away. The man did not answer her and only looked sternly after the stranger. When Larian ran to the portal that would send her north, she gave a bag of coins to a servant for the work done. Unexpectedly, she overheard an important conversation. Someone told Carls that it was time to go. He asked if it was really time, and a little later agreed that they should return to Wintel. Larian knew this name, Karl's Wintel. This was the father of Duke Kayans. Larian at first did not show that she knew him, and just stood there and watched. She was thinking about if they followed him, would they be able to easily contact the Wintel family? This was impossible. Why should she follow him secretly? The girl took off her cloak and told herself that she was Larian Hines. She didn't need to be so miserable. Larian approached the man and said that it was rude. He turned around. The girl said that she was Larian Hines from the Viscounty of the Hines family. She is also the elder sister of Atisha's, who will soon become the Duchess of Wintel. The man turned around and without saying a word walked away in the other direction. Larian didn't even understand what it was. Why does he look down on others? He is already black and as tall as a pillar. The girl thought about it. She remembered recently running into a man while she was running to the teleporter. The man she met earlier in the alley looked like a pillar. Could this man be the previous Duke of Karl's? So he ignored her? Like the previous Duke, he did this on purpose. Larian once again approached him and said that she was sorry for what happened in the alley earlier. The girl added that she was in a hurry then, that's why it happened. Karl's Wintel replied that he had never been to such a place. Larian was surprised and said that it became clear only now. The man replied that the faces were simply identical. That's the whole secret. Larian said that since they met it was fate, and asked if she could go north with him. I also have nowhere to stay in Wintel until my wedding day. Karl's Wintel replied that she could stay at Wintel Castle until her wedding day. He invites her to his guests. Larian couldn't believe it was so simple. Just a minute ago he was ignoring her. The girl looked into his eyes and noticed that the previous Duke's eyes were sky blue, and the man she ran into in the alley had black ones. So it was someone else. She stood a little longer and thought about it. She wondered why that man was pretending to be one person. The next day, Atisha went out into the courtyard to meet Duke Kayan. The carriage arrived and a man got out. Atisha was once again captivated by his beauty. The girl came up to him and said that she was glad that he was back. Today he returned earlier than usual. Kayan was surprised and asked if Atisha had been waiting for him all this time. She blushed and said that was not true. Today she will enjoy tea with her mother. The man said that he was going to go to a snow castle. Atisha said that yesterday she was also in this snow castle, and it was really amazing. She even wore a wedding dress. Atisha didn't understand why the Duke looked more tired today. A little dark. The girl asked if from now on she could meet him every time he arrived. The Duke did not understand her a little, so he asked again if she really wanted to come and pick him up. The Baroness blushed very much and asked herself what she was saying. The girl replied that it was nothing, and she said something bad. She asked him to forget about it. Atisha asked him to think about it. If she just waited outside, the Duke might feel uncomfortable. Besides her, there were also maids of the castle who came out to greet the Duke. Lots of maids. Miss apologized and said that this was not what they had originally agreed on. The man leaned over and told her not to say such things. He doesn't like it at all. He hopes Lady Atisha doesn't say such things. Tea party or festival, whatever she wants, it's no problem. The Duke added that she should simply use the remaining time as she wished. The girl thought that Kayan was really like this from the beginning. It seems something different. She doesn't know exactly what it is. The girl asked that the offer meant that she could live as she wanted in Wintel Castle. The man replied that this was true. She asked whether she should even enjoy tea with her mother or wait for the Duke. The Duke replied that that was right, and if she wanted something else, just let her tell him. Atisha thought about what she wanted now and realized that she knew what she wanted. Duke the Baroness asked the man if he could go with her and gave him her hand. She offered to go with her to the snow castle and enjoy tea with her mother. Meanwhile, at the castle, Mrs. Cirolese had a tea party with Judith. The woman apologized for calling her here so suddenly. She wants to directly apologize to her for what happened last time. Judith looked down and said that she should have apologized. Because she wants to become Cayenne's concubine, she has become so unstable. The girl began to cry, so the mistress quickly moved to the sofa with her. She told her that everything was fine and she was with her, it can fulfill other requests. Anything or anyone she wants. Judith said that Madame Monma told her that even if she was born a commoner, there is a way out. If she is approved by His Majesty and accepted into the noble family, she can receive noble status. The girl cried and said that if the lady really loved her like a daughter, then please let her accept her into the official Wintel family. If this is the case, then can she really become the daughter of the Grand Duchess? Judith said that if she did this, the girl would never think about Kayan again. The girl sat in silence for some time, and then Judith said that the mistress said that she was taking care of her. Cyrillise said that if she could, she would also like to give her noble status, but this is beyond her capabilities. She can't tell her why Judith immediately thought that she was lying, but the words the lady said showed that she really cared about her. She remembered her words about how dear she was to her. The girl thought it was all a lie. The voices in her head told her that she should not be deceived again. The noble Duchess of Wintel will not consider someone as low as her true daughter. She is just an imperial canary, a particularly favorite pet bird. Judith suddenly calmed down and said that everything was fine and she was just saying it. The girl apologized for saying something like that so suddenly. She thanked her for the gift, asked her to forgive her, and wanted to leave the hall. But when she opened the door, she saw Cayenne in front of her along with Atisha. Mrs. Cyrillise apologized and said that they should go back today. They will meet tomorrow. Atisha smiled and said that then they will return tomorrow. But suddenly, Dith grabbed the Duke's hand and asked them not to leave. With pleading eyes, she asked them to stay with her, and especially Cayenne. Atisha looked at Judith in horror and could not understand what had just happened. The Duke took back his hand and invited them to have a tea party together. 4 of us. Judith immediately became cheerful, as if she had not just cried. When the 4 of them sat and drank tea, Atisha couldn't help wondering what had happened here. She did not like the expression on the Duchess's face and seemed very gloomy. What was the Duke even thinking about when he invited them all to drink tea together? Judith reached out to Cayenne and said it reminded her of the old days. There were only 2 children in this castle, so they always played together. She raised her head and asked if he remembered this hut, this small hut built on a tree. The girl said that when he was young, Cayenne often went to this hut alone. Actually, she also wants to go with Cayenne. He asked if she wanted to talk about the house he went to with Miss Atisha recently. The man added that now Miss Atisha will often use this house. This way she can sing comfortably. Cyrillise told her daughter-in-law that she heard the news that she was singing a song dedicated to the opening of spring. Atisha smiled and said that there were a lot of compliments, and she hopes that the mistress will also sing for her someday. Cyrillise replied that she was already looking forward to the song performed by her daughter-in-law. The Duke raised his cup of tea and asked his mother if she knew that Dith was also invited to this party. The Duchess replied that she knew about that side of the story. Cayenne said that he will talk about it briefly then. The man said that he had terminated some transactions with the family of Count Monmad Cyrillise, said that this is a pretty reasonable answer. Judith couldn't stand it and screamed, asking what it was. Has he really cancelled his deal with Count Monmad? Countess Monmad did nothing wrong. She sang because she wanted to sing. Cayenne replied that if she continued to be near Countess Monmad, then the Wintels would no longer be able to protect her. So let her wake up right now. There is still time to talk about this. The girl hit the table and said that Madame Monmad is a good person. Judith spilled tea on the floor and decided that she would just leave now. Cyrillise shouted at her not to leave. Atisha jumped up and said that she would follow her. The Baroness ran out into the street and began calling for Dith. She saw her not far from the castle. The girl sat hugging her knees and was sad Atisha approached her. She asked her if she could stand and said that if she ran away so fast, she might fall. Atisha extended her hand, but Judith hit it back. The girl screamed. Judith, without looking up, asked her who she was to call her mom. Mistress is mistress, that's why she calls her that, so why did she call her that? Judith grabbed her, and Atisha started screaming for her to calm down. She was too excited right now. Dith continued to scream why she was not in her place, and suddenly the girl took the ring off Atisha's hand. She picked up a large stone from the ground and smiled. Atisha asked her not to do this. Judith, in response, just looked at the ring with a crazy look and laughed. She stood for a while wondering if she should do it or not. Atisha asked to give her the ring. Judith looked into her eyes and smiled widely. She swung the stone at the ring. Atisha was confused and just screamed, asking what she was doing. Dith said that if she cannot have this ring, she will destroy it. The Baroness grabbed her hand and told her to stop now. Judith screamed at her to move away from her, and then ran in the other direction. Atisha thought that it looks like she is not ready to stop. Why is she so excited? Someone behind her asked if this was complete madness. The girl knew this voice. She turned and saw her sister, Larienne. The girl came closer and closer to her. Atisha asked why she was there, but Larienne's gaze was fixed on Judith. Dith asked who she was. Larienne grabbed her by the dress and started shaking her. She asked her how she dared to touch her sister. Dith was a little scared. Atisha looked at this in horror and thought about why her sister was here. Larian grabbed the girl by the hair and started screaming that Atisha told her enough was enough. Her sister told her enough was enough. Atisha rushed towards them and started screaming and begging her sister to stop. Larian asked Dith if she really thought that she was the only one in the world who could become crazy. She began to pull the girl's hair even more, causing her to wince in pain. Larian asked what she should do if she was even crazier than Judith. The girl, in a fit of anger, accidentally hit Atisha in the chest with her elbow. She screamed. Someone from behind took her by the shoulder and pulled her closer. It turned out it was the Duke. He heard the screams and came. Atisha was glad that it was him. The man asked if she was okay. The Baroness smiled at him because he was here. Kayan said that he was worried, that's why he came. He looked towards Larian and Judith and asked what was going on here. Duke Kayan came over and told Lady Heinz to stop immediately. The girl froze at first and then let go of Judith. Atisha intervened in the conversation. She asked to wait a little because she wanted a private conversation with her sister. Val de Prame told the Duke that when Lady Heinz was traveling north, she happened to meet the past Duke and ended up accompanying him. Kayan replied that his father is not the kind of person who easily supports anyone. Why did he go with Heinz? With Larian Heinz? The man thought about how dare she come to this place. If she bullies Atisha again, he will not stop at expelling her. The girl sat in silence. Larian looked at Atisha and smiled with a smirk. Atisha L. asked her sister how she got here. Larian replied that she met Sir Carl's along the way. The girl could not believe what she heard. My sister said it was true. She will stay in this Wintle castle until the wedding. She was officially invited as a guest of the past Duke. Atisha thought about the fact that Judith received an invitation from Sir Carl's. She told her sister that her parents would be worried, so why shouldn't she come back? Larian screamed that no. Atisha thought that, as expected, Larian seemed to have no intention of returning. The sister smiled and said that she really missed Atisha and missed conversations like this. The Baroness replied that she did not miss her. Larian asked what she was saying. Tisha should be polite to her. Atisha told her sister that she wanted her to stop and go back to the capital. The girl started screaming, asking who told her about this, and then added that she understood everything. It was Kayan who imprisoned and brainwashed her. Larian said he was brainwashing her into breaking off her relationship with her sister. She stood up and started screaming for Atisha to wake up. There is no reason for such a great man as the Duke to actually marry her. She's dreaming now. Atisha asked her not to shout. Heinz asked if this Duke really took Tisha away from her. The Baroness told her sister that she did not belong to her. Since she will become the Duchess of Wintle, she is going to live a life that has nothing to do with the Heinz family. Larian asked if she really wanted to marry Duke Kayan. Does she care about this guy more than her sister? Atisha replied that of course she liked Duke Kayan more than her. She really likes him. The sister screamed that absolutely not. Kayan definitely doesn't like her. He will harm her and leave her at any time. Atisha replied that the Duke is not like that. Larian angrily said that since Tisha was doing this, she had no other choice. The girl said that she would tell everyone about Atisha's disease. All this. In the evening, Atisha stood in her room near the window and looked at the starry sky. She thought about what if Larian said that she had an excess of magical power. Someone called her from behind. It turned out to be the Duke. Atisha was happy to see him. Kayan gave her his hand, and when the girl touched her in return, he pulled her towards him. The lady was embarrassed. The man went to the window and closed it, saying that there was suddenly a strong wind in the north, so she should be careful. The Duke noticed that Atisha looked worried and asked if it was because of what happened today that she was in such a mood. Atisha swallowed and told the Duke that she had something to tell him. She said that her sister beat Dith because Dith tried to break her wedding ring. The girl tried to hide the bruise on her arm from Dith. The Duke noticed this. He apologized for being rude. Atisha didn't understand what he meant. The man said her hand didn't look good. He sees that his hand is turning red. Kayan added that she needs to be treated. Atisha. I told him that her sister said that she would reveal the truth about her excess magical power. She asked him what she should do. The man replied that if so, then even expelling Larian Heinz would be dangerous. If everyone finds out the truth about the date, the wedding will have to be cancelled. Atisha thought that Cyrillez would probably also be against it, because she wanted the Duke to have a life partner. She asked what she should do now. The man leaned down and took her hand. He put the ring back on her finger. Atisha even forgot about him because of her sister. The Duke asked Atisha to marry him. She asked what it meant to get married. Isn't it already decided to do this? The man replied that they would now go to the Wintel Castle Cathedral and have a wedding there. Once a marriage is concluded, it cannot be changed. The Duke said that it does not matter what happens after Lady Atisha becomes his wife. First, he needs to treat Atisha's hand. The girl said that she was really fine, but after she waved her hand, she screamed in pain. The man said Atisha should take more care of herself. He took peroxide and bandages from the nightstand. The Duke bandaged her hand and thought that he did not know when he began to care about the health and safety of Lady Atisha's. He just hopes that she is not sick or damaged and can live peacefully. Atisha thanked him for caring about her. She says it's okay because she's getting into the habit of saying it. Atisha L. added that Duke Cayenne is indeed a very good man. The Duke replied that he would try to become someone who would only be good in Atisha's memories. There are many enemies around him and they are quite dangerous. More specifically, there is no time at all to determine dignity on the battlefield. He became a good man only because he wanted the lady to be a good influence on him. Cayenne asked if he had pulled the bandage too tight. The girl replied that everything was fine and suggested that he now go to the cathedral. When they stood in the cathedral, Atisha thought about the fact that in the empire, it doesn't matter whether you are married or not. Only by fulfilling the marriage vows of husband and wife can they be recognized as husband and wife. With this vow, she and the Duke will officially become husband and wife. She also thought about what would soon become Atisha Wintel. Duke Cayenne told her that if she didn't like it, then they could stop it. Atisha replied that this was not the case. She asked if it was true that he didn't see any problem. Does he really want this wedding? Cayenne replied that he really wants to marry her. Atisha replied that then she also wants it. The man said that with the blessings of his father and mother, he, Cayenne Wintel, agrees to marry Atisha L., and he vows to remain faithful and honest as husband and wife. Atisha then said that with the blessings of her father and mother, she, Atisha L., agrees to marry Cayenne Wintel, and be sure to maintain the trust and integrity of husband and wife. The man said that now they must kiss each other for an oath. Atisha blushed. The Duke pulled her head towards him. The girl thought that he had missed other procedures, so why not leave a kiss? Atisha didn't have time to say anything when the Duke kissed her tenderly.